welcome to coverage of the 6th edition of the Tour du Jura. Thank you for bearing with us while we waited for these very wet and rainy pitches to join you this Saturday. Amstel weekend, of course, but today some classic French racing in the 6th edition of a race which forms kind of a 3-day unofficial stage race in the far east of France, and today their target, the Jura Mountains, just north of the French Alps, of course, and some wonderful climbs to undulate their way towards the big finale at Montpoupée. We have a big breakaway of 12 riders, which we're looking at right now. 3 of them were in the breakaway yesterday too. They currently have a lead somewhere in the region of 3.5 minutes. We'll wait until we get our ticker up on the screen to be able to update you on exactly their lead. We should see it. There you go, 3.5 minutes as it stands right now for these 12 riders. There were 6 originally, 6 more joined them, and here they are. Quite contrasting conditions to yesterday's classic Grand Besançon du, just north of here, where we had glorious sunshine and dry conditions. Today, quite the opposite. The rain started overnight, and it is persisting right the way up there into the Jura Mountains where the riders are headed. On the front, you can see Rory Townsend. He is one of the 3 riders, as I say, that were in the breakaway yesterday, back there today. We've just seen the South African rider, Morne van Niekerk, swinging off the front. He's back in there too. And the other one rejoining them is Emil Vignebo, the Danish rider for Leopard TOGT Pro Cycling Team, the Danish team. This is Rory Townsend back on the front, having won the King of the Mountains and the Sprints classifications yesterday. Tucked in just behind him in that burgundy helmet is Nicola Dalla Valle, who DNF'd yesterday, the Italian rider riding for Corotec, so might have slightly fresher legs than some of the others in here. And looking back down that line, I think I'll just run you through who the other riders in there are. You've seen it up on your graphic already. There are 2 riders in there in the yellow of Tarteletto Isorex, the Belgian team, and they are Mauro Verwilt and Jonas Riems, 2 Belgian riders in their early 20s. There is the youngest rider in the race in here too, in the blue of CIC U Nantes-Atlantique, or CIC U Nantes-Atlantique, the French team, and that is Noah Isidore, the 18-year-old. He is wrapped up, but he's further down that group in the black rain jacket, I do believe. You can see an orange jersey in there with no rain jacket on. That is the hardy Xavier Asparen, who's on good form after a fine 6th place in very similar racing conditions to this, the hammering rain of Paris Camembert just last week. Also in there, Luca van Boven. We didn't see anyone from Bingo Wallonie Bruxelles yesterday. In fact, we didn't see that team yesterday at the Grand Besançon do much at all. He is in there too. And I think that nearly completes the list. I've got a couple more to give you. There's Vincent Dorn, the German rider from Freiburg, who is riding for Bike Aid. He is in this breakaway too, as we're chopping back now to the front of the peloton to watch the chase. And that completes my rundown of all 12 riders, minus Andreas Stockbro, who is the other Dane in there. Stockbro and Vignebo, both in there, the Danes for the Leopard TOGT Pro Cycling Team. My name's Jez Cox, and once again, for the 2nd day in a row, I'm joined by Adam Blythe. It looks horrible out there, Adam, doesn't it?
Absolutely minging. This is not a day that I'd be out on the bike on by choice.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. If you didn't, folks at home, if you didn't see yesterday's classic Grand Besançon du, it's worth us referring back to it on a number of occasions, because it's much the same peloton that took on that race that take on this one. There were, notably, some 29 DNFs yesterday. If this were a stage race, I suspect that wouldn't have happened, but I think there were 1 or 2 riders either saving themselves for upcoming races or choosing to pull out of yesterday's classic Grand Besançon du in a way that they probably wouldn't if this was a 3-day stage race. It's the 2nd day of 3 races, all in the same region, all making their way around the Franche-Comté region. The final one is a Tour de Doubs tomorrow, and lots of these riders are doing all 3. We have got some fresh legs in here today, though. And let me just update people on what happened yesterday. Spoiler alert if you weren't with us, but it gives you an idea, because yesterday's classic Grand Besançon du also had a tough uphill finish after an undulating 2nd half of the race, much like today. But today is hillier. The overall elevation is actually slightly less than yesterday. What I should say is, I don't know what you think, Adam, I think that the parcours is actually a bit tougher today. It'll be made harder by the weather anyway, but the final climb up to Montpoupée is quite a bit longer than yesterday. Just to finish updating you on yesterday's result, Victor Lafay took the win. Yet another dominant display by Cofidis in that race in the third running of the Grand Besançon Duke. Victor Lafay was very strong at the finish, out-sprinting Lenny Martinez, the youngster 19-year-old Groupama FDG, who'd done an awful lot to try and get rid of Lafay. It hadn't worked though. Roger Adria took the final step on the podium, riding for Equipo Farmer, and he's the only one of that top 5, top 6 even, who aren't back here today. Roger Adria not racing today for Equipo Farmer. His team are though, and all the teams that were racing yesterday are racing again today. As you can see from the graphic, they're onto the Col du Coda. There are, I guess, less smaller undulations and more bigger ones today. Maybe that's where the difference in elevation gain comes. The Col du Coda is the first of our categorised climbs today for the King of the Mountains competition. To tell you, the first sprint point of the day today was taken by Michael Schwartzmann, the German, for Lotto Destiny. That was just before the breakaway formed. It formed of 6 riders initially, and then 6 more riders rode across and joined them to make the 12 that we see in front of them right now. Adam, yesterday, as the race went on in the Grand Besançon Duke, became really a battle between those top 3, not including maybe Arkea Samsic in that, but they popped up yesterday, but those 4 world teams, the French world teams you've got in this race.
Yes, I mean, they were the dominant ones, weren't they, let's say. I mean, Groupama, FDJ, AG2R, Citroën, and Cofidis, they really did police the peloton, let's say. And it's rare that you see 3 teams like that. You see on sometimes on sprint days, in tours, stage races, grand tours especially, where you get sprint teams coming together like that. But normally the responsibility is really chucked onto one team. I know we're not in a stage race, I know it's a one-day race, you sometimes get teams working together, but 3 of the big teams all come to the front, set the tempo in the peloton. You rarely see it, so I just think it shows how important it is for each and every one of the teams and their leaders in that team, how badly they want to get a win here. I know it will probably be, I'm going to say the same today, but I can imagine it might be a little bit different with Lenny Martinez yesterday really being dominant on that side, let's say. Victor Lafay winning, obviously, yesterday. Lafay and Martinez, that AG2R might say, you know what, we're going to leave it up to you guys today and maybe try something different in this final. Although the final today is a little bit different to yesterday, not quite as steep.
No, it's also different to last year because the Tour de Jura has made a thing the last few years. Only 6 years old this year, but pretty much every year it's shuffled and changed its course. It's got a different start, different finish again this year. Last year's winner was Ben O'Connor when we rode into Nizois. And that was a tough final climb as well, up through an archway into the town in Nizois. Great finish. Ben O'Connor was the winner on that occasion. He looked good yesterday. He was 11th. The AG Desert Citroën team were very evident in the closing stages. In the end, their best finisher was Clément Berthet in 6th, the Frenchman, and he looked very good yesterday, actually really comfortable on that final climb up to Montfaucon. So we'll look out for the boys in white and brown once again. Very different attire today though, Adam. There's an awful lot of rain jackets, leg warmers and even gloves and neck buffs on. In actual fact, you mentioned Lenny Martinez. I saw some shots of him signing on the podium this morning in Poligny, and he was fully wrapped up. I mean, he had a buff, you could just about see his eyes. That was about it. Yeah,
I mean, you've got to stay warm. A long day in the saddle today for these riders, so they will have wanted to stay warm right from the start. That breakaway will have gone, and then the peloton obviously backs off a little bit. They've not let this gap go out too far with the amount of riders in this breakaway, but one of the key things today will be to stay warm. It's 6.7 degrees out there, so it's not warm at all, and with the rain pouring, spray off the road, it's going to feel a lot colder for these riders. So staying warm will be a big part of the riders today in trying to save energy when your body's got to fight to stay warm. That's extra energy you don't want to use.
Absolutely. Just to let viewers know where the riders are right now, they are, as I say, they're on the climb of the Col du Coda, and it's the most northerly point of the whole course today in the Tour de Jura. They're right on the northern shoulder of the Jura Mountains as they are, and they're taking in a clockwise loop about 18 kilometres, which actually goes just north of where the finish is. at Mont Poupée, and they're going to descend this climb and actually go right past the base of Mont Poupée. So it's kind of similar to yesterday. However, they won't be taking in any of the climb itself, the final 10 Ks of climbing, until the end of the race itself. So they don't get quite as much of an insight into this finish as they did yesterday. They then take in, having gone past the base of the climb up to Mont Poupée, they then take in a big 65k loop right around the northern Jura mountains. In there they've got a couple more classified climbs as well. They still won't reach the high point though of 834 metres above sea level until they get to the top of Mont Poupée at the very finish as well, climbing away from Salins-les-Bains all the way up, and it's a fairly gradual climb for the first 5 or so kilometres, but it has sectors of 12% and then 16% in that last kilometre as well. So it should be a really fitting finale. As last year's finish was, produced a worthy winner in Ben O'Connor over Jesus Herrada, and Axel Zongler sprinting clear of the little chasing group once Herrada and Ben O'Connor had distanced themselves last year. Rory Townsend desperately trying to get a bottle there. I'm not sure who that was from, whether it was a team helper or a random by the side of the road. Hey, Adam, Rory Townsend looks very good again, and I think he's led all the way up the Col du Coda so far. Do you think I'm wondering, he did this yesterday, didn't he? This sort of thinking that, well, if I lead all the way up the climb, then if no one else should challenge me, I get to take the mountains points. It didn't quite work for him yesterday, did it? Because it was Moni van Niekerk who went, yeah, I'll have that. And sure enough, Van Niekerk moving up the outside to grab a bottle. He'll want to get into more jerseys today, I'd have thought, after yesterday. He's on a bit of a roll, Rory Townsend, the Irish champion.
He is great form at the minute, Rory, and he's just setting that tempo that he knows he can ride at. He knows that you can see the riders behind happy for him to do that work as well. And sometimes in races like this and on climbs like this, if you can set a tempo on the front which everyone's comfortable with, it's almost perfect for the likes of Rory, that he can just ride at his own tempo. But I was just about to say, there is definitely not going to be just rolling across the line here. Points are going to be want to be taken, and we can see this now right on the front. One of the riders there, I think it's Asparan, maybe. I'm not too sure. Oh no, Theo Delacroix. Yeah. Sorry, apologies. Yeah, you can see them both there, just fighting out for those points. Rory not getting them this time. So no. I think for Rory, a hard day in the breakaway yesterday. It's a little bit more climbing today, longer climbs. The one they've just been up is almost 6 kilometres, just over 5%. So not too difficult, but I'm sure Rory's feeling the efforts of yesterday in his legs.
That is the German rider, Vincent Dorn of Bike Aid, taking the points there. Yeah, I'd have thought Rory Townsend might be a bit displeased about it, but that's the way it goes. I don't know what you think, Adam, about whether that stands in that if there aren't other people who are actively going for those points, if you lead all the way in towards it, we often see this, don't we, that it's a statement of like, okay, I intend to take these, and that's why I'm going to do some long turns in the run into it.
Yeah, I mean, if you definitely want to take them there and you're feeling good, it's almost, there's no worry from behind, there's no worry about getting caught. And I think for Rory, if he definitely wanted to take them, he would sit back that little bit more, you know, just sit in the wheels, recover a little bit in the wheels, and then just try and unleash a sprint, watch what the other riders are doing. But you could see the way Rory was riding. I think if he was given them points and no one else wanted to take them, great. I think on a day like today in Rory's breakaway yesterday, he's probably just thinking, I'll just set a good tempo up here, we'll ride hard, and I might get them taken, but if not, I'm not going to make that big effort to sprint, because I might not have the legs today to do so. Bunny up.
Long descent now down through the forest, all the way down to Cesnay, where they start this big...
for the peloton.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It is a tight one, isn't it? Slightly sloping away from them as well. If they come around that left hand, we're going to see it a little bit. Again, in fact, he's hopped the apex there. Oh, I wouldn't mind knowing what tyres he's on, because he's got some decent grip going on there. There we go. He's going to sit up, get some sustenance in, and wait for the rest of the breakaway to come across. That's quite a big dig, when there was only in the end 2 of them who were going for that. Theo Delacroix and Vincent Dorn. Delacroix is an interesting rider. Spent the last 4 years in the World Tour riding for Entermarché Wanty-Gobert, and has moved down to the UCI continental level with Saint-Michel Mavic Aubert 93 this year, the French team. Of course, a predominantly French team in terms of riders. In fact, they're all French today, except for Moni van Niekerk, who's in here again. So 2 of those riders are not yet getting a chance to see that lovely yellowy orange jersey. I'm going to keep mentioning it in the hope that they maybe send me one, or mine one. Pretty looking thing. All back together again now by the looks of it, and they will continue to head towards that final finishing circuit. I have a few afters from yesterday, Adam. I had somebody very kindly, a couple of people actually, corrected me on something I mentioned yesterday about Miguel Martinez, Lenny Martinez's dad. I think I mentioned on a couple of occasions that he won the first ever Olympic cross-country mountain bike race. I was, of course, completely wrong. It was the second one, because that was Sydney 2000. The first ever Olympic mountain bike race was, of course, in Atlanta, 1996, and it was won by Paula Pezzo for the women. And colleague of ours in the commentary box on the mountain bike races, Bart Brentjens, of course, the Dutchman. So apologies for getting that one wrong, folks. The other thing I should mention is that as we ride further and further eastward, we are riding away from Poligny, which is going to be the finish town of stage 19 of this year's Tour de France. And the organisers of the Tour de Jura, understandably, really proud of it at the start this morning, celebrating what's going to be happening there when they have a finish of stage 19 on Thursday, the 21st of July, with just 2 days left to go. In fact, it's the last stage before they move further northward, back towards the big finale on the Champs-Élysées, and it should be a really exciting time. There you go. There's a thought just down the road from here on Thursday the 19th of July. Who is going to be in yellow on that day? Adam, who is going to be in yellow by stage 19 of this year's Tour de France?
Oh, so I have to check into my crystal ball for that, Jez, but crikey.
Please do.
I have no idea. I've literally no idea. It could be, well, one of 2 riders, Vingegaard and Pogacar, but a lot can happen in the Tour de France. But yeah, it's going to be a cracker this year, I think. A lot to look forward to, especially the way Pogacar's been riding so far.
Yeah.
Well, and Vingegaard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, they both started incredibly strongly as well. This is Thomas Champion on the front, the tall figure of the Cofidis man, who we've come to see, particularly in the French races the last few years, regularly doing exactly this, laying down some steady hard watts on the front to string things down and bring back a gap on the breakaway. They've managed to bring back a minute in that climb, although our breakaway is now, of course, quite a bit further down the descent. And Cofidis once again yesterday having another very strong showing. They got the 1-2 last year in the classic Grand Besançon Du, and yesterday once again they got the win. It was Jesus Herrada 1 year ago in Besançon, and yesterday Victor Lafay, who looked so good in that finish yesterday. Their team today, just one change. Remy Rochas, I should say. Victor Lafay was mentioning something about him after the finish. I'm not sure whether I might be wrong, but he may have had a crash or illness yesterday, didn't finish, and he is swapped out today for Eddie Finet, another useful team worker as well, Finet. So that's the Cofidis team for today. In terms of other changes, an important one to notice, and this could be something we come to talk about come that final climb, Adam. Arkea Samsic have swapped out Elie Gesbert for a similar kind of rider, but someone who's maybe in even better form, and that's Kevin Vauquelin, the 21-year-old. He's had a brilliant start to this season, the young Frenchman. Won the Tour des Alpes Maritimes du Var and was 4th at the Étoile de Bessèges as well. Really climbing well and proving himself as the next person that we can ask whether he's going to be the next Frenchman to win the Tour de France. Poor guy.
Yes, poor guy indeed. I mean, that is a lot of pressure on their backs right now, but we shall see what happens when we get to the Tour de France. Just to note, I'm pretty sure the road that they are going down now is the road that they are going to be coming back up. So even though this is slightly downhill, they will be, even though this is not categorised, coming into the final climb, they will be coming up this road, I think. So, yeah, there was a little left turn they just passed about a minute ago, and they will turn, and that is the official start of the last climb. But you can see ever so slightly uphill the road they're taking now. I think they're not on the road that they are going to be on now. I think they turned off of it. But yeah, we just got a little preview.
Yes, you're right. Well spotted. It is they turn at the end of that final lap, they'll kind of turn a left and then come back up the road they're on right now. You're right. Can't quite understand why they're pushing out so many vehicles from behind these guys. Or maybe this is
VIPs.
Yeah. Yeah,
need to get the marquee and get that champagne down next.
Well, done next. We've seen pictures of the finish line up there at Montpoupet, and it doesn't look very nice. It's shrouded in cloud, misty, wet. We could just see a few shots just before we came on air, looking into the commentary box and the commissaires and the judges' boxes over the finish line. It looked damp and very wet in there as well.
There's one thing for sure, Jez. Montpoupet is a bit poopy.
Certainly is. It certainly is this morning. Yeah, I'm glad you didn't try. I'm glad you didn't try any of those kind of jokes about yesterday's finish. You know what I mean?
Yes, I definitely do.
I'm not going to even go there. I'm not even going to go there. Anyway, looking into our breakaway now, Rory Townsend takes the glasses off. He's had 2 hard days out. I mentioned yesterday, Adam, about that thing about the expectation, the normalisation of being in the breakaway. You get in a big breakaway one day, and then the next race, I'm back in there again. I seem to find myself in the breakaway again. Of course, it's not that easy, but I was mentioning that concept, that idea that when a rider's feeling confident, it just making things like this happen. Same again with Morny van Niekerk. The 2 of them are there again. It's kind of not by chance, is it? Obviously, they want to be there, but they've got the legs. But it's a confidence thing, the expectation that, today I'm going to be in the break. I will be in the break. I will make it happen. And sure enough, 3 of them are here.
Yeah, I think it's also just the confidence of, being in that same peloton as well. You get to know the riders that are in the peloton, the ones to follow. And I think for the 3 riders that are in this breakaway, again, just being able to sniff out that move is a little bit easier on, let's say, day 2 of this non-stage race that's almost a stage race that's not a stage race. But yeah, they've obviously got very good legs as well, but I think for those riders having the confidence to get in the break and just being able to know the riders to follow as well, it makes it a little bit easier on the second day of a one-day race, but there's been a one-day race yesterday, if that makes sense. Let's call this a stage race. It's a 2-day stage race. It's an individual race.
And that was we had this conversation yesterday, and I think my thoughts were very much, let's just make it a proper 3-day stage race. But then I guess it can affect the way it's raced. I mentioned earlier that 29 riders DNF'd yesterday in a way that if it was a stage race, we probably wouldn't see.
Yeah, there were some riders that didn't start today as well. Victor Delapart, Damien Girard, Pierre Latour, and Samuel Zambelli, sorry.
Thank you for pointing that out.
There are some riders that have not started today, which, with weather like this, if they've had a rough day yesterday and a bit under the weather, they're not going to be great after a day like today as well. No,
that's 2 down then for Total Energies, who were a bit missing yesterday. Didn't see many of their riders. So Latour is out. Orsolin is in. He was 18th yesterday. He was their best finisher yesterday, Paul Orsolin, the Frenchman. They do swap in today, though, Steph Crass, who made the move from what was Lotto Soudal, of course, last year, over to Total Energies. I didn't point out yesterday, actually, there are only 6 rider teams in this race, not the 7 that we sometimes see. So smaller teams as well to do the work, despite the fact that as you look down, you can see all those red Cofidis jerseys all up there. And already today, we're seeing more of the Arkea Samsic team at the front. I think they will be buoyed by just how well Kevin Vauquelin has started this year. And I would say it's probably a very good finish for him, this long final climb. An opportunity to settle in over the first 5K where it's fairly steady on the Mont Poupée. And then it really steepens over those last 4 kilometres. Don't forget, those of you watching at home, watching these live pictures this Saturday, we have an awful lot coming up this weekend. Today, of course, it's the Tour de Jura, but then tomorrow it's Amstel Gold Race Day. The men's race being brought to you by Carlton Kirby and Brian Smith, and the women's race, Marty McDonald and Danny Christmas tomorrow, all at the home of cycling on Eurosport GCN. Don't miss any of that. Adam's a busy man too, because on Monday, he and Rob Hatch start bringing you the Tour of the Alps all week, Monday through to Friday. And then on Wednesday, Matt Stevens and I are bringing you the men's La Flèche Wallonne, and the women's race is being brought to you by Marty McDonald and Danny Christmas. Again, they're also on a busy old week this week. Of course, it all builds through, excuse me, to the next monument, which is Liège-Bastogne-Liège next Sunday. Rob and Adam will be bringing you the men's race, and Marty McDonald and Danny Christmas completing a brilliant week of women's racing at Liège next weekend as well. Might get a chance maybe later in this coverage to have a little bit of a think about Amstel and where we think that's going to go tomorrow. Some fascinating riders making a return to racing as well. I believe Marta Cavalli getting her season back on track again this weekend and looking to have a good Ardennes Classic week. Racing Flècheville on a Wednesday as well, of course. Marta Cavalli, such an exciting rider. It'd be good to see her back. I mentioned also yesterday, talking about the women's scene, Lizzie Dignan saying that she might well be starting back in the next week or so too. Might even be back for the women's Flècheville. And let's see. I haven't seen a recent update on that, so don't take any of that as anything that I say ever, in fact, as fact. But it is definitely going to be an exciting week here at the home of cycling. And then, of course, the Tour de Romandie starts after that as well. And we're starting that build-up to the Jura already, ripping our way through the spring. But let's not look too far ahead and let's enjoy where we are right now. This is a great opportunity, yesterday and today, to catch part of Eastern France, which is so regularly part of the Tour de France as well. But in one-day racing style today, this is a UCI 1.1 race, which means it's the third rung in terms of the ranking of world races that go World Tour races, Point Pro races, and then Point 1. The level just below that is Point 2. And I was mentioning yesterday at the beginning of our coverage, I would not be surprised to see either this race or the Grand Besançon Du becoming part of the Coupe de France, the French Cup series that runs season long during the year. They're still quite young races at the moment. This is its 6th edition of the Tour de Jura, and yesterday's Grand Besançon Du was the 3rd. So most of the races in that Coupe de France are pretty old as well, some of them going back 90, 100 years or so as well. So given a little bit more time, I would not be surprised to see these races part of that series. The last round was Paris-Camembert, which was last week. I think you can catch highlights of that on the GCN app, actually, with the host broadcast commentary over the top. And the next round is the Tour de Doubs, of course, tomorrow. So that is the next round. That race is a bit older than these two and will be the next round of the Coupe de France, that really important French Cup series, which is a big part of what a lot of these French teams aim at as their bread and butter during the season itself. And there are some great races in there, like Trobro-Léon, Morbihan, Paris-Camembert, as I said. And it all starts off very early on with La Marseillaise, which has always been the opening race of the French season. Right at the end. It's the end of January. I always think of it as being February. It's right at the end of January, La Marseillaise. You ever ride that, Adam? The opening Marseillaise?
I'm not too sure. I didn't do that many French races. I'm not going to say luckily, because they are brutal, but they are. They're very similar, the French races. They're very punchy, like this one. And it suits a certain type of rider, I think. So no, I never did that many of them, and when I did do them, they were, hard, very hard indeed. Did a lot of the Belgian ones instead.
Absolutely, yeah. It is fascinating, isn't it? It's not just the terrain either. It's the road types and the way they build roads, I guess, and how they take them down various different hills and things. We saw some really narrow roads yesterday, didn't we? A lot of snaky, narrow roads. And
similar to the one they're on now. It makes it for very entertaining racing and great racing. And I think, especially for me, when I watch this, I think, that would be nice to go on your bike round there. You know, if you live somewhere and you're training, and although the weather doesn't look nice today, these little roads, the small roads, they look relatively quiet. Just looks like a great place to go and ride your bike.
Yeah.
And we luckily get racing on there.
Absolutely. Well, it's not the best of conditions today. I did think this was going to happen. It actually started raining in the Franche-Comté region about a couple of hours after we'd finished yesterday's classic Grand Besançon Du, and I watched the rain radar and wondered whether it would clear over, but it hasn't. It seems to have stuck. And actually, it's fairly wet across quite a lot of mainland Europe. I don't know what the forecast is for Amstel tomorrow yet, but that might be interesting to see.
Let's not worry about it. Rain or shine, Pogacar's still good.
Oh, yes.
So's Pidcock.
Yep. Those two big favourites going into tomorrow, of course. Maybe while we watch this 2 minutes being tapped down, it gives us an opportunity to talk a bit of Amstel pre-tomorrow, today being Saturday. A lot of people thinking about the Amstel Gold Race tomorrow. The women's race, of course, is still relatively new, only started in 2001. And actually, even in its early days, it was a really, really big race. It was further out in the calendar, I seem to remember, than when the men's race is. But now, of course, they're held on the same day, which is exactly the way it should be as well. We're just watching one of our riders coming back from the breakaway, I think. Wrapped up in the rain jacket, it's a little bit tricky to tell, but I think that might be one of the riders from, I think it might be Noah Isidore, the youngest rider in the race. Didn't see that happen. I'll try and count up the riders who are in the breakaway now, but I think Isidore may have been fed back in. Quite some difference in what the riders are wearing, as you can see. Xavier Sparren, the Basque rider there on the right, really just the arm warmers to keep him warm. Short sleeve jersey and shorts. No messing around. He has got the rainproof overshoes on though. By the looks of it, in fact, Rory Townsend is the only one who's opted for those kind of front shoe coverings. Never really understand them, Adam, I must admit. I've never had a pair. I don't know if you've ridden them. You know, the little cap that goes on the front of the shoe.
Toe cover?
Yeah, that's the badger. Toe cover, yeah.
Yeah, brilliant little things. You never get cold back, like heels, do you?
No.
It's a good place to have, and the water always sprays onto your toes, and you never think, oh, my heel's cold, or anything like that. It's always your toes that are cold.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, fantastic little creations.
So the breakaway is continuing eastward at the moment towards Jerez, and the next categorised climb as well, which is the Côte de Tessy, but they've got to take a quite long descent down to get down before then. Oh, now we start to see a few more of the dark blue colours of Groupama FDG. We were thinking early on yesterday that it was all about Thibaut Pinot, but I did have that suspicion, didn't I, Adam, about the fact that Lenny Martinez was sitting at the back of their string yesterday, and it turned out in the end to be a good indication of what they were aiming to do.
Yeah, they're doing a great job as well. If you look now where they are, they're just right at the front pushing on. You can see the wind just blowing across the hills a little bit and splits in the peloton. So just coming to the front, disrupting things. You can see how it's lined out, and in weather like this, gaps could, you know, I'm not going to say open up and be really crucial this stage in the race, but they definitely could open up and just hurt the rider's legs a little bit too far back, and you've just got to make that bigger effort than you really want to get back into position. So it's just staying out of trouble, and just a nice little move there. You can see the riders in the background just losing distance, and there looks to be a tiny little spit at the front here as well.
Yeah, not too much wind to contend with today. 12-15 kilometres per hour, and it's mostly still a tailwind at the moment. Maybe something's happened in there at this point as we hear the squealing of those disc brakes into that same corner we saw our breakaway ripping through.
Beautiful.
They're looking back as well, aren't they? I wonder whether the Groupama FDG riders know that split has been created, because they really are pushing this one.
They are. They're making the most of it, and AG2R as well coming to the front. So that's two teams that have not really been riding, really coming to the front and pushing things on. You can see the peloton all lined out in the background now. So it's at the point in the race you see the spray off the road, the wind ever so slightly coming in, and with these downhills catching the police motorbike there, the breakaway that is, gives you a real sense of how fast these are going downhill. Especially in the wet, it's very, very difficult. It's not difficult in the wet to go downhill, you just have to be a little bit more cautious, but if you have a lot of confidence going downhill in the rain, you can make up a lot of time and a lot of distance on riders and ultimately save a lot of energy.
They'll soon start the next climb as well, making the most of this long descent, thankfully on pretty wide roads as well. Xavier Asparan seems to be enjoying this. 12 is quite a number, or I think there's still only 11 in there now, but 12 is a big number as well. If it's to continue deeper into this race, Adam, do you reckon it might split, or there might be riders who want to split it?
I think there'll be natural splits just because of the weather. A lot of the riders not really motivated to be in the race. So there'll definitely be splits where riders just see, sounds awful, but an early out, let's say, an early chance to get on the bus. Which I remember Tim Wellens always saying, you know, when you go on the start line and it's raining, you've already got a 20% advantage over the rest if you want to be there rather than not. So, yeah, it's for, I think a lot of the riders will not be enjoying today, and with these splits happening, they'll be enjoying it even less.
No, it'll be a short, sharp shock as well after yesterday's lovely condition. It was almost perfect racing conditions yesterday. Very light winds. What did we have? About 14, 15 degrees, something like that. Nice spring sunshine, not hot, not cold, dry. Quite different today, although it's not freezing cold there. I think it's about somewhere between 8 and 10 degrees. But as we all know, these horrible wet conditions will be really testing them. Xavier Sparren he really does like his levers turned right in as well. You can just see how his brake levers point right out. In fact, I was looking to see if his bar was flared at all. This is something I've noticed. I don't know if you've seen this, Adam. Tadej Pogacar riding this year, what I would class as almost like a gravel bar. And he also rides with his levers fairly well turned in, and then a really flared base, drops to the bar itself. It actually looks really comfortable. I wouldn't mind trying a set. So he's basically wider on the drops and then narrower on the hoods.
Yeah, the Envy bars, they are made like that. I think if you use a 40 on the drops, they are a 38 on the top, so they have a natural flare to them. And the way that a handlebar shape, that naturally brings your hoods in as well. So that's what he's opted to use. I'm not a fan of it, but yes, it's it is what it is, Jez. I've nothing left to say on the matter.
No, it just looks so wrong as well, doesn't it, in every way? It's almost like, yeah, it's just, you can just see, even as you look at Asbarin riding on his hoods there, you can clearly see that is not how they're designed to be used. Your hands are almost ready to slip off to the middle as well. I can't imagine the grip's quite as good.
It's, I think for a lot of riders as well, the new Shimano lever does very slightly point slightly in as well, so it looks exaggerated slightly. But I think for a lot of them, they use it to an air advantage, but it's also the comfort of your hands. If you put your hands out in front of you and you've got them completely straight, it's not a natural position. Your hands fall in a little bit more. So a lot of riders use that because it's ultimately a little bit more comfortable, but brings your elbows out a bit. There's that long argument that's never going to go anywhere from cycling, but yeah.
I think there's quite a number of aerodynamics experts, including Britain's own Dan Bigham, who said it's fine as long as you've got the flexibility and strength to be able to keep your elbows in. You're making yourself narrow at the front end, but if your elbows are sticking even further out because you're so narrow, then you've basically widened your front end wider than it would have been if you just had straight levers. So that kind of makes sense. We are watching increasingly Agida's Citroën team adding more numbers to the front. We can see those light blue BMC bikes with the kind of almost pinky red bar base top to their middle of their bar there. Quite easy to pick out, even in all these rain jackets. They stand out, those BMCs. Today has got to be all about Ben O'Connor, I'd have thought, after his win last year. He did look good yesterday. He was right there where he needed to be. And we've gone back to the breakaway to see that it wasn't just about the descent and having a bit of fun while descending, but Xavier Sparren is determined to kick on a little bit. We saw him yesterday on the final stages, on the final climb, I should say, on the Mont Faucon. He popped up on the lower slopes and did a couple of long turns on the front and then swung off as well. I'm sure his levers weren't that far turned in yesterday. That is extreme, isn't it? That's like Pello Bilbao in the prologue of the Tour Down Under, isn't it?
It's not far off, but yeah, they are turning extremely, but it's he believes it's faster and he's more comfortable doing that, then let him do it. It's
talking about the shape of the levers, the way they're designed, the Campag levers in recent years, although there's not as many teams riding Campag now as there once were, they turn in a bit as well, don't they? They've kind of got a hook that goes back inwards from each lever. Seems like it might do a similar job, maybe. We are watching Vincent Dawn now. It might be dawning on him that maybe he shouldn't have gone quite so hard with Asbarin, because he's now just sitting up, I think, a little bit, waiting for the rest of the group to reabsorb him. I'm looking down there to try and count it, because we're losing riders all the time on this tough climb of the Côte de Thésy. This might be day done for some of these breakaway riders. In fact, looking down there, I'm not sure one of them isn't Rory Townsend. I think it is with the white helmet on back there.
I think it is indeed, Jez, yeah. Definitely been distanced, felt the efforts of yesterday, and now just been distanced from this group. So, yeah, hard day yesterday. And again in the breakaway today. But it begs the question, why is he riding that tempo on the climb? If he's not feeling great on the climb, the previous climb, just back off a little bit, sit in the wheels, try and recover a little bit more. But Yeah, solid day out from Rory Townsend to get in his breakaway. He's been in there for a good 100k.
Yeah.
A little bit less, 80k-ish. But you can see all the riders, they're all suffering in the cold weather and just no one's really together.
No. That is Luca van Boven on the front, the man from Zottegem. I was looking back through his team history, the 23-year-old, and noticed he spent a couple of seasons with the Lotto Soudal under-23 team, and prior to that, he was with the GM Recycling club team in Belgium, which I've got a little bit of insight to, because some of the riders from my academy have made their way into that team, and it's run by a very good friend of mine, a chap called Freddie Gillis, who, any of you who know the central part of Belgium and the support that's given to foreign riders, Freddie Gillis has what is effectively a farm, a small holding there, and has put up so many riders from outside of Belgium over the years to come and live effectively on his farmstead, basically living in a kind of converted barn and racing from there as well. He and his family hosting and looking after so many young riders from right across the world, actually, and had a big involvement in that GM Recycling team that Luca van Boven has come through for 2 years. Oh dear, we're getting a look at Thibaut Pinot in what might be his final year of racing. As we said yesterday, or he said, unless he wins that French national title. Do you think he might be? Do you think he might be going for the sprint to win that from a leading group of 4? And they think, oh no, do I really want to? We were discussing this yesterday, weren't we, Adam? That he said at the beginning of the season, "This is my last year unless I win the French national title." I'm just wondering if, imagining, he's in leading group and he's sprinting for that national title. He can see the line coming and then thinks, "Do I want this? Do I want to stick to this?" Of course, he didn't have to do what he said, but I wonder for just a split moment he might think, "Oh, I'll just ease off a little bit. I'm done with this."
Yeah, I don't think they'd ever think that, Jez. Definitely not. We've got a little replay here. AG2R riders really pushing on in this rain in the wet now. You can just see the spray off the roads as well. It's these awful roads that just hold that water ever so beautifully, but makes you 10 times wetter.
Yeah, they're quite smooth roads. You can see where, as so often happens, the further south you go in France, where the roads have been baked in the summer and have melted ever so slightly and then left that kind of jet black sheen on top of it. You can see it in strips down this road itself. And of course, they make a lovely riding surface, nice and smooth, but just that little bit more slippery, I think. And that also looks like a fairly reduced bunch. Once again, those riders who have the opportunity to peel off and get themselves in some kind of team vehicle, who might be riding tomorrow's Tour de Doubs, there is, this not being a stage race, once again, that is an opportunity to be able to do that. There's Lenny Martinez, second wheel, still wrapped up to the nines, got his neck buff up round his face like an open balaclava. He is the most wrapped up man there, I think, by the looks of it, as he was on the podium. He's not taking any of it off. There's Ben O'Connor, alongside, alongside Thibaut Pinot as well, just sitting on that second row. As always, very tricky to pick up the riders in these conditions. There's Martinez on the inside. The youngster, if you weren't with us yesterday, the 19-year-old who kicked clear on the final climb up to Montfaucon with Victor Lafay and put in some really stinging attacks. Around about 2 or 3 really big digs, high cadence, snappy attacks from just behind Victor Lafay, and every time Lafay just steadily closed his way back up to the teenager, and in the end had enough to take the win at the finish yesterday. If you haven't watched that race and you're catching this, there's Rory Townsend, the Irish champion, being fed back in. Another good day out. In the break at Brabant-Sapele, in the break yesterday, winning the King of the Mountains and the Sprints classification in the classic Grand Besançon-Doubs. I think his legs may have just given out a little bit today. He was doing, as Adam said, he was doing a lot of work, particularly going towards that first mountains classification on the Col du Coda. Didn't work out for him, and Vincent Dawn took that one. And he's now back in the fold. That's a 2-minute gap that he's dropped back down very rapidly, so it shows the speed at the front of the peloton, but also how much in the end maybe Rory Townsend had to sit up there. And Xavier Asbaron is set on having a hard day out. I wonder whether he was the most underdressed in that breakaway. Maybe he just needs to get warm, Adam. He needs to try and warm himself up a bit. There's a good incentive for that. How many times have I heard often older riders say, well, look, you just wear less when it's raining like this, and then you have to go harder. I wouldn't recommend it to young riders, but it makes sense on paper, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, There's yes and no with that. You can ride harder, but ultimately, if you're at your limit already and you just cannot get warm, makes it very difficult. But, Lenny Martinez on the attack very early on here. 71 k's to go and putting the hurt on.
Wow. Well, we were looking back to see the gaps behind.
It looks to be.
Yeah, it is. Pretty certain it is. He was wrapped up like that at the start. And this is Clément Berthet going with him as well. So already, big names, big performers from yesterday on the move. Ben O'Connor sits fourth wheel as well. O'Connor, last year's winner of the Tour du Jura, right up there. Yeah, Lenny Martinez was really frustrated, banging the bars as he came across the line yesterday. Just behind Victor Lafay. And today, definitely set on making up for it by the looks of it. You mentioned, Adam, yesterday, we talked about the fact that he's still 19 and he's doing some of the under-23 races still anyway, whilst also riding for the World Tour team of Groupama FDG, as well as the development team. He's not the only one. There's other riders in here doing this. I noticed today, I should say, in our breakaway, Noah Isidore, who's been fed back in from the breakaway now, the youngest man in this race. He was 7th in the under-23 Ghent-Wevelgem just a couple of weeks ago, and then now today finds himself in this race as well. And we started that conversation yesterday, didn't we, about what the under-23 ranks mean now for riders who are attached to teams that also have a world team or a pro team outfit as well, that find themselves doing both. I'd love to see the percentages of what riders ride only the under-23 races and then and don't do any of the, oh dearie me, I don't know what you call it, 0.1, 0.2, the senior over 23 races, if you like. There's a best young riders classification in this race anyway, but it's certainly a blurring of the boundaries between, as Adam and I were saying yesterday, what used to be called professional and amateur. Here we go. Ben O'Connor having a dig now. The big names really are coming out to play. O'Connor kicking from about 5 or 6 back, and this climb of the Côte de Thercy is not the biggest on the route, but it's certainly becoming important at the moment.
It is. It's heating up very early on here. I'm wondering what the outcome of this, with the riders attacking this early on, want it to be, because 70k to go is still a very, very long way. You've got Pinot as well, just in the background, coming across to that. So that is a very strong group that is just going clear. A bit more reaction in the background now. Cofidis riders trying to jump on board to that, but I'm surprised, Jez. 70k to go. 1 minute 27 across to that breakaway, and they are starting this early on. A lot of riders want it hard, well, harder than it already is with the conditions.
Yeah, this is very surprising. Thibaut Pinot has closed up the gap. Guillaume Martin coming with him as well. Victor Lafay on the back wheel of Guillaume Martin. The two Cofidis riders in those red rain jackets in the increasingly misty, murky conditions. They get that little bit higher up into the Jura Mountains now. And Xavier Asparin, our lone leader for Euskaltel Euskadi, persists. He actually went on the descent, didn't he? And this is one of the Burgos Biache riders here who's attacking. And that group is getting smaller all the time, our main peloton. It's eventually, I think, going to become a leading group by the looks of it.
Yep, I'd say that is pretty much going to happen, Jez. I think with the way that they're riding now, this break is going to be caught back very, very quickly indeed. Well, what's left of the breakaway. The way that AG2 are riding, well, not just AG2 are really, even Francis de Jure, Arkea as well, all wanting to press on very early on.
Yeah, well, this is actually most of the break being caught now. So I think the 111, well, the 111 is definitely all the way through to Xavier Asparin. This is the back half of the breakaway. Nicolas Delavallee and Vincent Dawn we've already seen being fed back in. Noah Isidore did survive out there. He's in the blue there of the CSC Union Atlantique. So the youngest rider in the race wasn't dispatched from the breakaway early on. He's survived until this point where they're now being mopped up by, well, I think we still call it the peloton, but it's a much reduced peloton over the middle part, really, of this race. We're only just over halfway. This is the Côte de Thercy with 69k to go. Long, long way out this, when they've got quite a lot more climbing to come.
A hell of a lot more climbing to come, Jez, not just a little bit. There is a heck of a lot more climbing for all of these riders still to come today, and it's full gas pretty much, even from now, almost at the top of the climb, if not just coming over the top of it.
Yeah. Well, I think now Xavier Asbarin has gone through. That was, interestingly enough, just as they're being latched onto, Noah Isidore here of the CIC Union Atlantique, that is him, I'm pretty certain, was in the breakaway. And just as they're being caught, he's taken, I think, second across the top of the Côte de Tessie, because Xavier Asbarin has gone through there first. I think Vincent Dawn, the German rider, has also been back in, and I may be wrong, but I think this is now effectively Group 2 with no one in between them.
Yes, that is pretty much as well the longest climb of today that they've got, apart from the last one, obviously. But now they've got a little bit of a plateau, sprint points on top of the next drag, let's say, and then they drop down before the second to last climb that's categorised, but they do have one in the middle that is not categorised, and that's 3.3 kilometres. The one before that, 2.9 kilometres at 7.4%. So now they're on the top of the ridge, as you can see, with the lead route out the front, Asparan. He's doing a fantastic job, and obviously not feeling the cold too much. No gloves on, always good to see. Glasses tucked down the back of his jersey.
Yeah, and
I think this is going to be a lonely place for him on top of this hill at the minute, though, Jez.
He's a good time trialist, though. I was tracking back, trying to remember this year. I've seen him ride a good time trial, and I know where it was. It was the final TT of Gran Camino, where Jonas Vingegaard had taken his first ever time trial win this spring. He was 9th in that one. He had a teammate as well, also in the top 10. Two Euskaltel-Euskadi riders in the top 10 of that final time trial at Gran Camino, and not necessarily a team that we always think of as having strong ruler-type time trialists in particular, but Asbarin is one of them. So I think he's got decent pedigree at plugging away by himself.
And 34 for yesterday as well. And in Paris Camembert a few days before that, he was 6th. So he's obviously in quite good form, I'd say.
Yeah, and the conditions at Paris Camembert were just like this too, cold and wet. So he'll be ready for it. This is good to see. Another of the Tarteletto Isorex riders going on the tack. They had two in the break, in Mauro Verwilt and Jonas Hiens. And this all-Belgian team produced yet another attacker. Ah, there we go. So we weren't all back in either.
Not just
one
yet.
Or two. But it is all coming back together. The textbook said the winner's going to come from that group. But right now, actually, Xavier Asparin's got a decent lead. I wonder if we do see him being caught, what kind of composition of group is going to come to him and how much he can survive with them too. As Adam has mentioned, it's quite a long plateau now. We've reached this high point. Between here and the next sprint point, it's slightly climbing up anyway, the next sprint point in Aresh. 5, 3 and 1 points available at each of these sprint points for our sprints classification. And it's exactly the same numbers for the mountains as well, 5, 3 and 1. Regardless of classification, there are no classification to the hills in this race. It's just 5, 3 and 1 at each of the categorised points. There's 3 of them. We've taken in 2 already. The Col du Coda, where Vincent Dawn was first across. And then we've taken in the Côte de Tessie, where Xavier Asparin, those men appear to be almost naked. What's wrong with them? Why would you do that? Oh dear.
Don't waste their Saturdays, do they?
No, they're probably sat there every Saturday. It's actually nothing to do with the race. They're just surprised at seeing a bike race pass. Anyway.
Activation of the brown fats, Jez. That's what it is when you get that cold. Here's a little replay of it.
Yeah, lovely. No, thankfully they're not quite naked, but they may as well be. They'll be, invigorated. So it doesn't look like it right now. They have a descent down to the plateau proper. Then they start this very, very gradual ramp up over about 10, 12 kilometres in the direction of our sprint points, and then another really long descent. Thankfully, quite straight roads in this part of the course, not too many twists and turns. The twists and turns really come a bit later on. In fact, there's a really fast descent in about 40 k's time, as they descend down to Les Planches Pré à Bois. We do have a golden zone to come to, Today we should get a chance to see it as well. Those of you who were with us for our pictures yesterday will know that Adam and I had quite a long period of time where we didn't have any racing. We lost pictures from our race and we ended up watching a lizard and what turns out to be a shield beetle. And Adam was, as he always is, riveted by my reading of the wildlife. I found out it was a shield beetle as well, but we don't know what happened to it, whether it got eaten or not. We cut away before the lizard moved in for the kill.
Oh, what a shame.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
What was the name of the fish again, Adam, yesterday in the River Doub? You remember?
Oh, I don't know, a flappy fish or something like that.
Unbelievable. This is so rude. You weren't even listening to me.
I was listening. I just blanked out for a bit, Jez. I was definitely listening. It was something to some like zebra trout or something.
You've got it. Lovely. Yes, the zebra trout of
this is what
the
you've
River
tuned
Doub.
in for today, folks. Zebra trout chat.
Oh, that looks miserable, doesn't it? As you said at the beginning,
Awful.
That looks horrific.
I think that's a good indication, though, there, what it's like just even being sat on a wheel, how covered that lens is. And you can see he's just riding into the rain right now. He's not even really following the car and how much dirt is on there. That'll be in every rider's face and times about 10 because they're on the wheels, obviously. So it's not a pleasant place to be in that peloton. Unless you're feeling good and full of motivation, then it's a great place to be because on a day like today, you can really take advantage of a lot of people. Very reduced pelotoners now, as well now, Jez.
Yeah, much reduced. This is definitely a casquette day, I would say. I don't know how you feel about that, Adam, but I wouldn't have gone anywhere near this. Or I wouldn't even just riding my bike nowadays, as we can see Ben O'Connor there with his little white casquette poking out from under the helmet. Despite all the advances in all sorts of technology, the little cotton cap with the stiff peak, it's genius on a day like this to be able to see. Were you a casquette man when you were racing? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, definitely in the rain as well. You can just shelter it, and if you put your head down, you can protect your eyes with a little bit of the casquette from the rain coming up off the other wheels. You can't do it much, but it definitely does help. But more than anything, it just keeps your head that little bit warmer.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, until it's completely drenched.
There is. I have a massive head, though, so I whenever I've worn casquettes, I have to cut them or cut the top out, which is always a good look. I've got a few casquettes where I've cut the top out of them, so your hair sticks out the top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Luke Rowe's done that on the podium a few times. Brilliant look.
It is a good look. This is Thomas Champion again, back on the front for Cofidis. And that gap is coming down just a few seconds, trickling down a few seconds at a time. Down to 1:30 now to Xavier Asparent, who's doing a good job by himself out there. And they're soon to be down at the most southerly point of the course as well. They're about halfway, nearly halfway round the big loop that's going to take them back to the finish on the Mont Poupée. This is the second half of the 6th edition of the Tour de Jura with me, Jez Cox, and Adam Blythe. Welcome if you're joining us this Saturday midday, as it is in Central Europe, and wherever you're watching us around the world here on our digital coverage on the GCN app specifically. Thank you for your company. If you're watching it back in highlights form, I hope you're enjoying a great weekend of racing as we watch Ben O'Connor swinging his arm to try and get a little bit of blood flow into those gloves and shake out some of the rain as well. The riders have been dressed like this since the sign-on at about 10 o'clock this morning in Poligny. I hope the weather in Poligny on July the 21st, when the Tour de France finishes there, will be better. I suspect it will be. It's not a massive town, Poligny, either. It's a big coup, them getting the Tour de France stage finishing there. It's not a cheap deal either. There's a lot of money exchanged in these things, a lot of political will to make these things happen. And this race in particular, the Tour de Jura, has shuffled around a little bit because of Tour de France stage finishes. In fact, it was... I'm trying to remember now, looking down my notes to remember where it was. It started a couple of years ago. Oh, there we go, Champagnol. It started in Champagnol last year, which hosted a finish of the Tour de France in stage 19. Again, it was in the 2020 Tour. So there's obviously a bit of forethought about this in terms of where this region is used for at the back end of a Tour de France, and also then how this race might be used to showcase and try out some of the local infrastructure in terms of supporting things. Supporting a race finish of a race at this level, UCI 1.1, of course, quite different to hosting a finish of a Tour de France stage, which is absolutely massive. I've mentioned on a number of occasions this race is 6 years old today. It's actually, as a bike race, 20 years old today when it goes back to its amateur days, all the way back to 2006 when it was started as an amateur race as an offshoot to the Tour du Revermont, because we're in Revermont here. But it didn't become a full UCI race until 2017. I'm trying to get my head around this, Adam. Maybe Xavier Sparrin's just got good legs. I just can't understand why from so far out he would have chosen to do this today. Or he seemed to get away on the descent. Is it just a case of him finding himself there?
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously got good legs. That gap is still 1:35. The peloton has pushed on. They've backed off ever so slightly and settled back into the rhythm. But he's obviously got very good legs. And being out here on your own, you can settle into your rhythm a bit. If there's, as we've seen from that breakaway, well, what's left of that breakaway, there's not hardly anything left of it anymore. That you can settle into your own rhythm. You don't have to stop, start. You can get into a rhythm on your own on the climbs itself. And just with it being as wet as it is today as well, you don't have to worry about what other riders are doing around you on the descent especially. So he's probably just quite happy to be out there on his own and take that chance. And with a peloton that is probably going to be reduced even more coming later into the race, if he can get himself into whatever group it is and just hang on for whatever position he might finish in, it's going to be a great ride for him. And the form that he's in now, I'm not sure what race he has coming up next, but it can be a great building block for him going into his next races as well.
This is the German rider, Vincent Dorn, being fed back in. He rides for the Bike Aid team. Maybe worth me talking a little bit about that team and what they do. It's a German-owned team. But Bike Aid is a charity that supplies, aims to deliver recycled bikes right the way across Africa to enable better transport use, but also they have an involvement, understandably, as a professional bike racing team, in also helping to develop the sport of cycling in Africa as well. The gap is going out a little bit more, though, under Asbaren's constant pressure. I don't know whether more of the teams and the riders here seem happy that there's just one rider out there rather than the original 12.
Yeah, I think they're just playing a little bit as well now. I think after the action on the last climb with the attacks from the likes of Ben O'Connor, Pino as well, is that they've almost shown the card a little bit. So Cofidis been riding for most of the day. They've got one rider on the front, but just probably thinking, you know what, they're probably going to attack again. So we're just going to not use too many riders. We're going to keep a few in reserve. We're going to hold back a little bit. We're not just going to take everyone to the finish when attacks have already happened with 70k to go. We need to be cautious.
Excuse me, coughing into my mic. They are getting ever closer to Ardèche, the next of our sprint points. I'm afraid we haven't been able to bring you the result of the sprint point in Marnoz. I haven't seen it anywhere, Adam. I don't know if you have, so I'm trying to think who's leading the sprints classification. Michael Schwartzman, all the way back in Villiers-les-Bois, was the winner of the first sprint point of the day, and it was literally rolling, as you so often see after that sprint point, the little easing after that first sprint point, that our first breakaway of 6 went. 6 more jumped across to join them to make 12. They are nearly all back in the fold now, save our lone leader out there at the front, Xavier Asparen. You haven't seen that Marnoz result anywhere, Adam, have you?
They've not gone through it yet,
yeah.
Jez. They've not gone through it. There's still a couple of kilometres, if not a kilometre away from it. So for that intermediate sprint, they will be crossing that line in about the next kilometre, I guess. So that's why we haven't seen it yet.
Adam, I haven't explained myself. I meant the second one of the day. I don't think we ever saw it. Marnoz. It's after like 64k, something like that. Just thinking ahead to this next sprint point as to who's leading that classification, but I don't know just yet. We might find out afterwards, maybe. We were just about to come on air when that one popped up. Asparen is necking the gels right now. I wonder whether he might have suddenly realised what he's taken on. 2 gels. No, I'm not sure that isn't actually 3 gels in one go. He's definitely just necked 2. And he's being handed another one as well. This is impressive fueling. Yeah, that is definitely 3 gels he's just necked, and he's on to a 4th one.
Can't blame him, really. Get him down your neck.
What are we talking? 60 grams of carbohydrate in a gel, something like that?
It really depends what it is as well. I mean, the gel could be a carbohydrate gel, it could be a caffeine gel, could be so many different things that is in that gel and what type of gel it is. But sometimes on a day like today as well, it's a lot easier to have a gel rather than, trying to grab in your pocket, trying to get a load of food down. It's easier to digest as well. So it's probably just for the ease of it that he's doing it.
He's had a busy old season so far, Xavier Sparren, so he's obviously, he'll have no excuse for having good form like this either. Started his season at the Saudi Tour, where I was on the mic actually at the Saudi Tour. Who was I with? I can't even remember. Adam, was I with you or was it Brian? Might have been Brian, maybe. Brian Smith at the Saudi Tour. And he had a good ride there up to that fantastic outcrop overlooking Alula at the sky views of Harat Urawid, Asbar, and he was 8th up there as well. So we know how well he can climb. Finished on 9th on general classification after the 5 stages of the Saudi Tour, and then rolled through a lot of Spanish racing, raced the Gran Camino, as I say, his best result being that 9th place in the final time trial, where remarkably Jonas Vingegaard took his first ever time trial win in Santiago de Compostela at the end of that long pilgrimage route, the race which marks so many of those pilgrimage routes, of course, in northern Spain. And then he moved on to Catalonia, so he'd done a lot of stage racing already this year as Baron, and was in a very long break on stage 2, 150 kilometres in the breakaway into Valter, and then he rode the Pays de la Loire as well, that 4-day stage race as well, in between some 1-day races too. So quite a bit of stage racing, a lot of days of racing as well. And as Adam pointed out, 6th in that soaking wet Paris-Camembert last week. 34th yesterday, after we saw him pop up because he's got that easily recognisable moustache at the front yesterday on the final climb. 34th yesterday, and the only surviving rider from the breakaway today. And he's hanging on to, well, what could be getting close to the 2-minute mark again all by himself. I hope they know he's out there. That is a fantastic noise. Very open and exposed part of the course this. He's got a bit of a crosswind from his right, but not too strong, pushing him from the right, pushing him over to the left-hand side of the road there, as you can see. In fact, you can see the raindrops that you can see falling, just coming in at a little bit of an angle. And he's going all the way southward, as I say, to the furthest southern point of the race, down in Pont d'Erry, before climbing back into the middle of this star shape that they're taking in right now. Very close to...
He's doing a fantastic job here, Jez. I mean, even settling into your own rhythm, this can happen in the rain where, you start to find your legs a little bit, you start to not feel the effects of the cold. And as I said, once you're in that rhythm and feeling good and feeling strong, you get to know that effort a little bit more as well. And if it's stop-start, as it has been in the peloton a little bit, it makes it very difficult to almost get going in a kind of way, if that makes sense. It's just... it's the best way to describe it. Just almost... it's almost like the cold settling back into your legs, almost like coming out of a cafe stop where you really get hot, you get warm, and then you settle back into a rhythm, you get cold again. Whereas Asperin out the front here, he's in that rhythm of just goodness, almost. No, that doesn't really make sense. Yeah. But
he's the hammer rather than the nail, isn't he? He's controlling the pressure he's putting on himself rather than reacting to others around him. And, I mean, of course, we won't know because we're not him, but if you were in his position now, he'll have a power meter on, I'm sure. We can't tell whether he's a sort of rider who's watching the power meter all the time, but you can't help but think, we were talking yesterday, weren't we, about moves going earlier and people trying things from much further out. That measuring out of their kilojoules, that's the fascinating thing for me, is I get the whole measuring out of, like, watts in the moment and average watts and stuff, but what I can't get my head around, Adam, and I don't know whether you started doing this in towards the end of your racing career, is that understanding of how many kilojoules of effort, work you're capable of doing in 5 hours, looking at how many kilojoules you've done so far and knowing whether you've got what you've got left. And I can't do that kind of calculation in my head.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost near on impossible to do that calculation in your head. I don't think that's something you can calculate. You just need to stay on top of it, make sure that you are eating and drinking, and just try to get as much as you can without overfeeding. But I don't think today reaching into your pocket is not going to be easy for one. So you're not going to be eating as much as you need to anyway. So I don't think really that's going to be a worry for a lot of people today.
That's interesting you say that. I won't disclose who it was, but I was having some chat with a young rider, British rider, who's racing at a pretty high level now in a stage race, and talking about nutritional approach. And I think I said something to him like, well, you'll never hear someone complain they've eaten too much on a stage, but maybe I'm wrong. I guess you can eat too much and then you end up having stomach problems and stuff. But have you experienced that? You know, literally thinking, surely, I'm sure you've experienced more often I wish I'd eaten more, I wish I'd had more gels or bars or whatever, than, I've eaten too much.
Yeah, definitely. I've had it once in Milan-San Remo where I just told myself I need to eat. And yeah, it was just way too much that I did eat in the end. It was, not pleasant.
No, okay. Yeah, that's not. I'm guessing that's not the kind of race either where you want to reach the Cipressa with a heavy stomach.
No, definitely not. Definitely not indeed.
No. Another shot again of Ben O'Connor, last year's winner, just trying to get a bit of warmth into those hands. Of course, waterproof gloves are one thing, but if the water's running down your arm and into them anyway, they're effectively becoming bags of water. There's that theory, Adam, I don't know whether you buy into this, the idea that actually, like you get with neoprene boots and wetsuits and things, once you've got some water in there, your body warms it up. I don't know whether that's something you subscribe to.
No, not when you've got cold water still coming in constantly.
Yeah,
it's that doesn't happen at all, really. I think that's the hard thing as well. Once your kit's wet, especially your leg warmers and your gloves and everything, your hands are going to be wet. So to get them warm or dry again, you have to constantly. You can't do it for leg warmers, but for gloves, you have to be constantly changing kit, and that's why you see some riders just wearing shorts still, even though it is very cold. You get the benefit of having the warmth of a leg warm at the start of a race, but later on when it's just wet, you're just holding on to a bit of wet material around your leg. So just a lot of embrocation, a lot of heated oil, Vaseline on your feet, etc. On a day like today, you can start off a little bit chillier, but I think you might end up staying that tiny bit warmer maybe when it comes into the end, and you don't have to carry a load of heavy kit around.
Notably, Xavier Asparen, I think, is wearing the least of everyone I've seen in shot at any stage today, wherever they are in the race, in the break or in the peloton. In fact, we were looking at one of the Cofidis riders there. He's got his not Cofidis. Yes, Cofidis has got his leg warmers, I think, just hanging over the top of his overshoes. I guess when you've got cold, wet hands, it's even harder to get them off too.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think trying to get anything off when you've got cold, wet hands and you're losing that feeling within your hands, trying to even get anything out your pocket can become very, very difficult indeed. And even with the gloves, big, heavy gloves that are wet, sometimes just clicking that right gear can be difficult sometimes as well, just that little button, which has obviously got a lot easier in the last few years, especially with electric gears now. I remember in Kerner, Brussels Kerner, the year Bobby Traxel won, and the year I think it was Jeremy Hunt. Was it Jeremy Hunt or was it Tor Hushovd? I think it was Jeremy Hunt in the last 5K. I think he was 4th or 3rd, and he was that cold he just got off his bike. It was too much for him, and that's after a long day of it. But they had mechanical gears back then, and the Campag was almost impossible to change gear, and he couldn't really change gear and brake. But I don't think it's that cold today. It's just wet and cold. Yeah,
I think there wouldn't be surprised. There's quite a lot of viewers who've experienced that feeling of getting home from a freezing cold, wet ride, putting the key into your front door and having to use the palms of both your hands to turn the key. I've been there. I've been there.
Exactly.
Not nice. You can't turn the shower on either. I've had to use both hands to turn the shower on as well. As we watch Xavier Asparen keeping himself warm at the front. He's cornering well, he's handling the bike well, and he's getting on with what's now set to be a really tough day out, but he looks up for it.
He does indeed. You can see him, just the way that his body language is, just settling into that rhythm, coming out of the corner, sprinting out of the corner. He doesn't look laboured, and he doesn't look like he's fighting to get warm also, which can make a big difference. You see a lot of the riders, O'Connor just shaking his hand, trying to get some heat and trying to get some blood in there. He's not doing that. He looks comfortable.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, Arkea Samsic, much more attention today. If anything, it's Groupama FDJ who are doing a little bit less today. In those top 4 world teams, the French teams, Groupama FDJ, Cofidis, Arkea Samsic and Agides Air Citroën team, it is the Agides Air Citroën team who've done probably the most over the last 30 kilometres, along with Cofidis. And understandably, Cofidis have so much potential in that team, as we saw yesterday. Jesus Herrada, who was second last year in this race, Victor Lafay, who won yesterday, and Guillaume Martin, who should be, I'd have thought, Adam, even better suited to this final climb than he was yesterday.
Yes, you'd say so, but the weather can change things, but I'd definitely say he's a little bit more suited, and the way he was going yesterday, he's definitely going to be the hot favourite today, along with Lenny Martinez. So it's going to be an exciting one. The climb in itself, though, even though it is categorised as 4K, with that drag up to it, it's about 6.5K long with that drag up to the official start point of the KOM. So it's going to be a little bit better for the likes of, Guillaume Martin as well. A little bit of a longer climb.
They'll shortly be into quite a tight... this is the first of them. It's 2 turns. They have a right turn here. And this is exactly the most southerly point of our course in Pont-d'Héry, as they climb now all the way back in the direction in which they've come. In fact, very close to where they were some 30 kilometres ago, going northward, back into the middle of this sort of starfish shape that they're taking in, or this big finishing loop.
The last climb there, Jez, I've just had a little look, and it, from the pretty much the point they do start to climb, 9.6k, average of 5.1%. Now, that is with a little downer before the official KOM starts, and the official KOM is only, I'm just having a look now, 4 kilometres at 8.2%. So there is a drag that is going to definitely hurt the legs of the riders before they get onto the official climb. The last 4K being the hardest, obviously, as well. So will be a slightly different to what we saw yesterday. Well, very much different.
Yeah. And as you say, the weather changes lots of things as well. Not just about road conditions and how fast you can take corners and what have you, but just mental fortitude, attitude, up for itness. I have to say, Adam, I know you were talking earlier about who was it was mentioning to you about the rain. You said it was Tim Wellens, wasn't it?
Yep.
About it being a great leveller and writing off certain people. I still cannot believe, and I refuse to believe, that any bike rider, professional, amateur or otherwise, wakes up in the morning, sees a day like this and goes, oh yes, this is my day. They might think, well, I know I cope better than others, but I just can't bring myself to believe, as we watch those leg warmers coming off at long last, that someone goes, oh, good, this is going to be nice. I'm up for this. I
don't think they're going to say, oh, it's going to be nice, but they're definitely, it's just a weird mentality, and obviously, without being awful, Jez, you don't have that.
You're damn
I mean,
right.
That's the nicest way to put it, because it's hard for people that don't have that mentality to understand it. But I guess it's for the likes of Tim Wellens or anyone else who likes riding in the rain, that advantage they must get must be quite a lot mentally more than a lot of people.
Well, this guy's definitely got it. Gloves? What gloves? No need. Let's just crack on and get on with it. He's not taken the rain jacket off at this point either. If you've just recently joined us, folks, Xavier Sparren was like that from the minute the breakaway formed after just about 20 kilometres. No rain jacket, short sleeve jersey, and go on then, a pair of arm warmers. Got to be comfortable.
Well, my eagle eye has spotted a Gabba style jacket over the top of it, so arm warmers and a Gabba style jacket over the top, which is looks identical to his jersey, so
he's soft.
Easily mistaken.
Yeah, he's soft.
Well, I'd say he's the opposite, Jez, because he's only in that. He's hard as nails. Yeah. 2:06 as well, he's flying.
He is. He just keeps extending it. I do hope they know he's out there. I know I've said it a couple of times. Stranger things have happened.
They have indeed.
They did push an awful lot of vehicles past him. Of course, all the support cars will have got out of the way for any of the other riders. It is just Euskaltel Euskadi, the Basque team, who have one rider in the lead. And he still has 47k to go. But he's making a right old fist of this too.
Oh, motorbike having a little rev there as well. Oh, he's fallen off.
Oh, dear. That
Fingers
shows how
crossed he's
slippery.
all right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, shows how slippery it is.
Yeah, absolutely. He's down at one of the low points at the moment, underneath that bridge as well, and he'll start climbing again. Now, as you can see, don't need me to tell you that, he's on his way back up towards Fontenay, climbing in the direction of Champagne. Oh dear, I've mashed that. It's something like that. I'm not going to reverse and try it again.
Yeah, this climb, not the longest in the world, just under 3k at just over 7%, so short and sweet and quite difficult. So I think if we've seen attacks from 70k out, we'll probably see a few more of them now. Quite a little bit of downhill after this climb as well, all the way onto that next climb that is not classified, and that is 3.3 kilometres at 6.7%, sorry, so another little toughie, and then it's downhill all the way to the bottom of the next climb, the final climb, which we mentioned. So it's going to be fast and furious.
Well, that next climb may not be classified, but it has a, excuse me, golden zone on it, which we might see today. And we'll try and figure out how it works. I think from yesterday's golden zone, and I can't actually remember who won it now, it is just literally the rider who is the fastest through the golden zone. So I'm presuming you could actually win the golden zone off the back of the peloton, maybe, if you'd worked that out as some kind of tactic. Certainly if someone had a long sticky bottle through there, it'd be quite a neat way of taking the golden zone.
Well, I think that golden zone's a load of rubbish, to be honest. I think how can they judge the time of which...
Say what you think. Don't hold back.
You can't do the first rider through it. You've got to do the fastest rider through it. And how are they keeping a track of each and every rider who's the fastest through it?
Good question. I don't know. I think it probably is just the first... Yeah, but you could be the first one through and then ease up. No, I don't know. No,
there's no way of doing it, Jez. There's no way. As you just said,
they've all got transponders, right? They've got transponders on. So if you put a timing line at the front and the back of the golden zone, maybe it's that.
Yeah, they've definitely got time to do that. No, I think it's the first rider through, which makes sense. It gives the riders something to go for. But there could be someone chasing on in the cars that's had a puncture. You know, they'd be the quickest.
Hang on a minute. That's just a sprint point. The first rider through is a sprint point. The golden zone is about the zone.
Well,
I'm not sure about this.
Is it?
I don't know. It's not about the line. It's about the zone in between. Surely that's certainly how. Oh, then again, actually, you're right. In the Belgium tour, where they used that golden zone, it was 3 sprint lines: one at the beginning, one in the middle, one at the end. I'm just making this up.
This is just a zone. This is just a time zone. It's like a time trial, but no one can get the times of the time trial. Great idea.
It did have I know I'm doing him a disservice. I can't remember who won it yesterday, but it was a slight surprise to me. It was someone we'd not seen really in the race, and so yeah, there we go. We'll watch out for it. That looks like Ryan Christensen, the Kiwi, right in the middle. I can tell he's a black spoke rider because he's on one of those really nice looking purple Pinarellos. They're on nice rigs, that team. Ryan Christensen, another of those riders who made the move from With Sun God at the beginning of the winter. The British team, which wasn't called With Sun God this year, but had a name change, but disbanded at the beginning of this year. Really strong Kiwi.
You can see some of the riders in the background as well now, Jez. Just getting distance, so just getting into the latter part of the race now where riders are starting to just drop off the back a little bit. That pace is slightly increasing to this man out in front, but he's doing a good job so far. It was 2:07 before the climb. The acceleration into the bottom of the climb from the peloton will have brought that down. But you've got to take your hat off to Asbjørn here. He's doing a fine job indeed on such an awful day.
And the peloton on the steepest bit, the bit they're on now, is about 15% as well. It's got a couple of ramps which go above 15% as well. So it's a tough little climb, this. The Côte de Champagne. Oh, I've done it again. Champagny. Hello, where's Lenny Martinez? We're picking him up here. If that is him, Adam, then he's off the back of the peloton as well.
Yeah, quite a long down. Well, not a long downer, but quite a not too much time pedalling there on the pedals and maybe getting a little bit cold. He's only about 41 kilos. So
Yeah.
the cold getting into his legs, starting the climb again, or maybe a problem. Who knows? But he looks to be passing the cars quite quickly. Well, we can't see actually who it is, but he's getting back up there. So he might have had a problem with the gears slipping at the bottom of that climb as he turned onto that corner. He looks to be quite comfortable if that is him getting back on.
Yeah, it did look like a Groupama FDG kit, and actually by the looks of it, he looked like he was moving quite smartly up the outside of the cars as well, so might be seeing him back in at some point. Right in the middle there, Ben O'Connor, last year's winner, maybe gives me an opportunity to track back through the last 6 winners of this race. As I say, the finish has moved around every time, but it's in the same region, and they're all using the Jura Mountains on the very far eastern edge of France, quite close to the Swiss border, as we were yesterday. We're just south of where we were yesterday in Besançon, almost exactly due south of there in actual fact. 2021, it was Benoit Cosnefroy who was the winner. I've seen lots of people picking him as a favourite for Amstel actually on Sunday, and with good reason, of course. He was second there, wasn't he, Benoit Cosnefroy? Was that last year in Amstel? Not looking at my results sheet right now. I think that's the case. He was the winner in 2021 ahead of Simone Velasco and Valentin Madouas. 2020, there was no race. That was the COVID-affected season, and this race did not happen. 2019, it was Kobe Hussens, the Belgian rider. Probably before that many people saw him as a big hitter in the hills. He certainly had a good start to this season, Kobe Hussens. He was the winner in 2019 ahead of Christian Scaroni and Jérémy Cabot. 2018, it was Carl Fredrik Hagen, the super strong Norwegian, again ahead of Kobe Hussens and the Aussie Chris Harper. And in the first edition of this race, 2017, it was Thomas Degond, the Belgian, ahead of Fausto Masnada and Guillaume Martin, who is here, of course, today. There is Guillaume Martin, bottom right of your shot with the misted up glasses. And a very old school Banesto jersey hanging over the line there. I love it. Someone's ruined their collection. That's a 1994, 95 Banesto jersey maybe, hanging out in the hacking rain. Slightly unusual, especially considering that Movistar aren't in this race.
Cofidis riders are doing a great job here. That gap is coming down ever so slightly, not as quick as I thought it would, but they are holding the pace quite nicely, and no one else is attacking from that. No one else is looking like they want to attack from that. So the pace that they're doing now, just with one rider on the front as well, doing fantastic. You've got to take your hats off to this rider that is on the front there. I think it is Eddie Finet. I could be very, very wrong with that. It's difficult to see the race number.
I think it's Thomas Champion. He's the tallest of those Cofidis riders. I think it's him, Adam. Not to correct you. He's been doing a fair
correct
bit.
Away. Correct away.
I always look for the... He's one of those riders that I think, I would argue, is probably the tallest in this peloton. He's a lanky, tall guy, good climber, and they seem to set him to do the pacing on the front a lot of the time, Cofidis, in races of this level, and he's, yeah, pretty certain that's him. It doesn't so much remind me of him today, but he's got these long, slim limbs that remind me a little bit of Belleville Rendezvous, only because his name is Champion, of course. And I think, if I remember correctly, the young lad, you know what I'm talking about, Belleville Rendezvous? You must have seen this, the musical cartoon, the French cartoon about the young lad who wants to ride the Tour de France. You know what I'm talking about? What?
No, I have no idea.
All right, okay. Now, I think I'm going to have to call for the cycling Twitter to get you. We've got to motivate. You've got to watch Belleville Rendezvous, Adam. It is unbelievable, wonderful kind of trippy cartoon, French cartoon. It's brilliant, about a young lad who dreams of riding the Tour de France, and his name, I'm sure his name is Champion, or they call him Champion anyway. And he's tall, long-limbed lad, lives alone with his grandma or something. Oh no, I can imagine already people listening thinking, you don't know what you're talking about, Cox. I've seen it a couple of times. I've shown it to my kids when they were sort of 5 and 6. They absolutely loved it. It is right out there. It's wonderful. Adam, I've got to task you with watching it. It's on YouTube, I think, if I'm not mistaken. It's all over the place. Belleville Rendezvous. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And
I'll look out for it.
Do, please. I'm going to be checking in with you to make sure you've seen it. Hello,
oh,
hello.
Here we go. Nans Peters there.
Oh, you said it was going to happen on this climb. They've kind of stirred it up a little bit, and now they're really chipping away at it. You're right. Nans Peters kicking hard, the Agi Dessert Citroën team rider.
It's a great attack there, a great little move. I think with Cofidis being able to control the peloton, that is it Lenny Martinez again trying to come across that? No, it's not that. Too big of a rider for Lenny Martinez. But yeah, just with one rider out the front here, it's great to open the race up, but if you can get a little bit of company, that's ideally what he wants. He isn't going to be able to 127, you can see how quick it's coming down, but going to the finish solo with a finish like it is today as well will be a very, very difficult task indeed. So Nans Peters is trying to open the race up, but surely he'd want a little bit more company than what he's got now. I'm not sure why he attacked really, to open the race up when they didn't have to control things as well. I know he's trying to force some more attacks coming from the peloton, but the way that Cofidis were riding, he had a nice seat there, patiently waiting.
So Xavier Asparin has gone across the top of the Côte de Chaux-Champigny in first place. Nans Peters takes the 3 points. Didn't see who the 1 point went to, but it won't make too much difference because I suspect Xavier Asparin may well be on the podium at the end of the day as our king of the mountains. There is only one. In fact, no, that's the last categorised climb, isn't it? We've got the golden zone to come, and then that big final on Mont Poupée. Nans Peters, of course, Tour de France stage winner from 2020, the man from my favourite.
In the background.
Oh yes, yeah, Thibaut. Now, is this for himself or is this for the team or what? Or does he just fancy it? He's
bit of both. You know, for himself, if that opportunity comes, he's got Guillaume Martin right on his wheel though, so he's been stalked heavily. But this will be maybe for Lenny Martinez earlier on, but with an opportunity maybe for himself in there trying to chase Nans Peters down. But you could almost feel how hard it is with the wind as well. There's been a lot of riders look like it's a lot easier to sit on than doing this job on the front that Nans Peters is doing now.
That looks like Jesus Herrada now. He's got his head down, trying to go across this gap. So maybe that's what it is, a little satellite move by Nans Peters to see who can jump across to him. I'm pretty certain that's last year's second place finisher, Jesus Herrada for Cofidis, trying to bridge across to Nans Peters, the man from Grenoble, on the edge of the French Alps.
I mean, if Cofidis can jump across this, if Jesus Herrada can jump across to it, and only him, maybe another one, which it doesn't look like he'll be able to do. It'll be a great move by Cofidis and some great riding indeed. They've been riding on the front already, so then to put a man up in the breakaway will force another team to chase, but just the way everyone's following at the minute, doesn't look like he'll be able to do so. But even if he brings that back, it might neutralise things again. They can start riding on the front, but Cofidis doing what they can to try and take control of the race. They were riding, but Nans Peters definitely throwing a spanner in the works. I wouldn't be too worried about this right now, really. I'd just try and settle into a rhythm, just try and leave Nans Peters just dangling there at, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever it is. Let him tire himself out and just use him as a nice carrot.
Yeah. I mentioned that Tour de France stage win in 2020. It wasn't far from where he lives, actually. I seem to remember it being on the edge of the Alps. Might have even been Grenoble or somewhere like that. I think where he won that stage of the Tour de France, making the most of his local knowledge and his riding ability carved out in the French Alps. He's a great all-rounder, powerfully built guy, but climbs very well as well. It didn't quite work out for Jesus Herrada, but his team are leading the chase. I keep looking at him to see if I can spot Kevin Vauquelin, the young Frenchman. He's got a little goatee, beard going on, and there are a few Arkea riders there, and I haven't seen him yet. Maybe he is just hiding, keeping his powder dry. Once again today, it does seem that of the four big French world teams here, Arkea Samsic have been the quietest. And it isn't easy to pick out with all those rain jackets on. The lime green coloured rain jacket, you can see back there, viewers at home, is Total Energies. They always ride in those lime green jackets in the rain. That looks like Paul Orselin in the lime green. They have something of a cross headwind at the moment. as well.
It's not too much of one today, which is quite lucky for these riders. Riding on these very open roads, we see a rider attacking from that peloton, direct energy. He could have afforded just to let Cofidis do that job. Cofidis getting back on the front, taking control of things again. Ultimately here, this is a very big effort, especially with Cofidis on his wheel. He's doing what Cofidis were doing anyway, of bringing them back. He's just making Cofidis' life easier and his life a whole lot harder right now.
Yeah, and all the while that gap has come down a little bit. 1:16 to Xavier Sparren, who we keep going back to every now and again to look at, riding that long time trial out front. The Basque rider for Euskaltel Euskadi. You can just see Jacob Scott on the outside there, the British rider for Bolton Equities Black Spoke. He tried to get away in the first breakaway of the day before he saw Rory Townsend go as well. In fact, he took some points. He took 1 point at the first sprint point at Villiers-les-Bois before missing out on getting on the break of the day. He was one of the riders swapped in today, replaced Mark Stewart actually in the Kiwi team today, Jacob Scott, and knowing what he's like, I was expecting to see him in the breakaway today. He obviously did try, but it didn't quite work out. Rory Townsend got in there and then his legs gave way, but then the whole breakaway, except this man, are back in. And once again, making the most of the superb grip he obviously has and good cornering technique in the wet, because we're into the most, well, we're about to come into the most twisty-turny bit. There's a very fast descent down to the river in the next valley, actually. They go right the way down to the base of the Mesnate, where the Golden Zone starts, but the descent down into there is particularly tricky, down to Les Planches Près à Bois, right down in the deep, deep forest. In fact, we're rolling through a lot of deep forest in the next 25k as we go down to the edge of the river Cuissance. It's not a river I've ever heard of before either, so I can't even tell you any fishy facts about it, Adam, which is a great shame. La Cuissance, it flows southward, by the looks of it, from the River Doubs, where we were yesterday.
Oh, we got some of those zebra things
yes.
in.
Yeah, trout.
Zebras
You
in
know what they are. Don't pretend you don't know what they are. I'm continuing, extending your education in
I am
fish
trying
and...
to forget.
Well, I saw him moving up, and I don't think this is Jacob Scott, but it's definitely one of the Bolton Equities Black Spoke riders in the purple and yellow.
Putting the pressure on downhill. They've got a long downhill now until they get onto the... It's not really a proper downhill, but very much the kind of roads are going on. It does drop off a little bit steeper soon, 4%, 3.5%, just towards the bottom, slopes of 9% that they'll head down, and then they go on to that second to last climb there, the unclassified one, which, as I said, 6 kilometres roughly, at just under 5%.
Well, he has got a little gap, this Bolton Equities rider. I'll try and figure out who it is. Never quite so easy when they're all wrapped up so much in these conditions as well, where it is constantly murky and milky. Some of our lenses having been wiped a little bit more than others. Thankfully, our lead motorbike here is a clean one. So we can see right the way down that chasing pack. Still led by Cofidis. Got the win yesterday, let's remind ourselves, courtesy of Victor Lafay, who looked so good at that finale yesterday up against Lenny Martinez in the classic Grand Besançon Doubs, where Lafay took the win. And Ben O'Connor finished a fair bit further down yesterday. He was in 12th place, but came good on the second day last year of these 2 days of racing in the Franche-Comté region. Is he going to do the same again today? Last year, the weather was the same really across both days. Tour de Jura conditions were very similar to yesterday's conditions in Grand Besançon. Nice and mild, dry and sunny. This is quite a change today. We're not quite down to the technical part of this descent just yet. As Adam said, it's just ever so slightly downhill, but it steepens into some switchback turns right the way down to the river valley. Quite a spectacular looking descent as well. Down to the edge of the Cuissance. It's a tiny little river actually that beyond where they are, in fact where Asbaron is right now, the river effectively peters out into being a tiny little trickling brook and then disappears completely right the way at the bottom of the valley.
That kid on the right hand side, he's putting in his best efforts there, isn't he?
He's chosen an uphill stretch. That was always going to be a big ask. Good for him though. Getting in his running strides on a Saturday. In fact, he's run back up to his family by the looks of it as well. Good lad.
Yeah, Asbaron is holding on quite nicely here. We've got one of the black spoke riders. Still don't know who this rider is just yet, but a little move down that hill there. He's opened up a nice little gap. I don't think, respectfully, Cofidis will be too worried about this right now. I think they've settled into that job in hand. They've covered the moves that they need to and taken control of the race. And there we have the rider, James Fouché. So putting in a solid effort there. Rain jacket on, overshoes on, been warmed up nicely all day. It's a good move this, as I said before. If he got someone with him and was able to take someone with him and share that workload, and with 36k to go, as I said, we go on to the next climb very shortly. We've still got to drop down a little bit more just yet. Then we roll onto that climb, 6 kilometres for the very fast descent into the bottom slopes of the final climb. Yeah, I'm sure he wouldn't mind a little bit of help, but with the next climb coming up, being able to settle into his own rhythm and not be bothered almost by someone else who are a little bit stronger, suffering a little bit more and maybe not being hold the wheel, so being on his own is not too bad on the climb, but at these parts he'll be nice, I'm sure, if he could have someone with him. .75 to go. Jez has just nipped to the toilet, so if anyone wants to bombard him with messages on Twitter that are completely random, feel welcome. On a day like today as well, if anyone's running another way of how these riders might try to stay warm, is that the soigneurs, the helpers on the team, they put hot tea into the bottles which are in the team car in a cool box which won't have ice in today. It'll just be full of hot tea in a flask that they keep pouring into the bottles and handing it out to the rider. We used to have a little bit of honey in there, so just a nice tea and honey just to warm you up a little bit. It doesn't stay warm for long, so as soon as you get it, it is right down the neck, scalds your tongue, and yeah, it does help to warm you up ever so slightly, but it doesn't help warm your hands up. Hans Petty's again back on the front. Or is it an attack? Maybe a bit of both.
I wonder whether they are using this is a primary aim of him trying to get out the road, or whether it is just literally he's the one who he's the stick stirring the honey, getting things moved up at the front to sort of definitely stringing them out. There's a lot of work going on there just to close up those little gaps that are opening up in amongst it all. That is definitely Jacob Scott who's moved up there on the outside, isn't it? And I think, is it James Fouché who's in between the gap, Adam?
Yep,
trying to
James
get across.
Fouché is in the middle there. And it is Jacob Scott, sorry, just on the right-hand side there.
Yeah.
They are definitely really pushing on randomly right now.
Yeah. This is the team of Corotec. I don't know whether they're trying to cause some trouble into this little descent, because it is very technical. This descent down to Les Planches Pré-à-Bois, in amongst these rocky outcrops of the Jura. Right in amongst here, the limestone mountains, which is what most of the Jura is formed of. And it's really strung out, and that group is not massive, is it, our main peloton? But oh, foot out as well. My goodness me, he is really pushing it. You're right, Adam, I can't quite figure this out, other than maybe they now, maybe some of the sport directors, the teams feel they've got to bring this gap back on Xavier Sparent.
Yeah, I mean, they are really pushing it. That could have gone horribly wrong for not a lot of reward by the looks of things at the minute. So they definitely want to bring this back, but just in the way that they're doing it, going downhill, taking big risks, it's stringing out the peloton, but you see Cofidis again, just all over it. They're bringing back James Fouché right now, so that effort that he made is a solid one, but just reading the race there, recognising the moment with a big downhill coming up. You've got Jake Scott coming to the front now, once again, another one of the Black Spoke riders.
Yeah, they're having a good race, aren't they? Bolton Equities Black Spoke, intent on showing themselves throughout this race. Wouldn't be surprised to see Jake Scott, the next one to go on the attack as well. But all the while, Xavier Asparen is just continuing to ride his long time trial out front. And it looks like it might be drying out ever so slightly there, Adam, unless I'm imagining it. It looks a little bit drier there. It might just be because we're in amongst the trees of the forest.
I'd say so. It's definitely not getting drier.
Oh,
and they won't be getting any drier either,
no,
soaking wet all the way until the finish of today.
That is true. These are those switchbacks I was talking about, down to the valley bottom, down by the river.
I take my hat off to Cofidis today. They're doing a great job controlling the race, responding to attacks. They're not letting anything get up the road without... They are putting in a big effort, but even on the downhills here, being right at the front, positioning well. You know, not riding too hard to make things too difficult for their team leaders when need be, not letting things get out of hand. It's the very, very back of the peloton. And a total direct energy riders. Not sure if he's got a problem.
He looks like he might be stuck in his biggest gear, maybe, unless he's just deliberately soft pedalling and waiting for the team car.
Black Folk Cycling here, really pushing on, trying to... Jacob Scott now on the front, just trying to push on and stretch things out a little bit. With James Fouché go up the road already, they might want to make things hard, but a little head start coming into the next climb, maybe.
Yeah, that next climb is the penultimate climb of the whole race, of course, the Côte de Mesnay, which has that golden zone about a couple of kilometres or a kilometre or so from the top, in actual fact. Not that it'll probably make too much difference, but it is there. Then we start the very long descent down into the valley that takes them through Salins-les-Bains and the long final climb, which we suspect, as we have done from the start, as we watched Jake Scott with a foot out as well.
Yeah, it's good to push on here, but ultimately, you know, if you can create a split in the peloton, which Jake Scott is trying to do, he must have very good climbing legs on him today. It's not a bad thing to do this, but the amount of risk they're taking at the minute, they've still got 30k to go with a lot of climbing, and no disrespect to Jake Scott, I don't think he's going to be up there at the finish today, so I understand why he's doing this, trying to get ahead of the race, trying to get ahead of the great climbers within this race, but he's also risking a lot. If he comes down here, it's not going to be good, and no risk, no reward. It's great to see sometimes, but...
Oof, wow.
We'll see how long he carries on this for now.
Jake Scott, of course. British viewers will know him as a former winner, I think double winner, if I'm not mistaken, of the King of the Mountains competition in the Tour of Britain. He's certainly won it once.
Twice.
Twice, there you go. Yeah. A strong breakaway rider. Very good sprinting from small groups as well, Jake Scott. Very good criterium rider too. Good all-rounder. One of those three riders, as I say, British riders who made the move to the Kiwi team of Bolton Equities Black Spoke over the winter.
It's like now in this situation what he's doing, trying to create a gap to go, but if he looks over his shoulder, he's got an FDJ rider there, he's got a Cofidis, AG2R, he's got Pino within that group. Yes, it has split, but ultimately he's just dragging them along now. He should just get off the front, save his energy for this next climb, because he's got the big teams, the big riders behind. He's done that job for them already, whereas now he should be sitting in the wheels, trying to recover, trying to get some food down his neck for the next climb, try and get ready for the next climb coming, rather than try and force the pace with those big teams that have, especially Cofidis, which have been taking control of this race so far.
These shots we keep seeing from behind the race, I'm going to label them as being merely for effect, because we can't really see anything, but it does give you an impression of just how wet and cold it is. Guillaume Martin's taken the glasses off to the left-hand side there, just popping back in the Cofidis man. The other thing I've noticed, Adam, is there are still quite a few orange jerseys sitting back there as well. 3, I think, teammates of Xavier Asparen who, yeah, there you go, in the orange jersey of Euskaltel Euskadi, and they're going to sit there and do nothing at all, of course, for now. Looking a bit further down that group, there's definitely quite a few of the Lotto Destiny riders we've not really seen too much of so far. They've got no Eduardo Sepulveda today. He climbed well yesterday to finish, where was he in the end? Somewhere inside the top 10? No, slightly further down, sorry. He was 15th yesterday, but he was the best Lotto Destiny rider yesterday, the Argentinian, Eduardo Sepulveda. He's been swapped out today. I haven't yet picked out which of their riders are here. Adam, your former team, Lotto Sudal as it was, Lotto Destiny. They've definitely got two or three.
Very, very difficult to tell which rider is which in the rain jerseys. Rain jackets, not jerseys, apologies. .28 k's to go now. They are going to start climbing again very shortly. Guillaume Martin is still in there as well. Ben O'Connor as well from AG2R, still right at the front. The riders we're expecting to see today. I've not seen Lenny Martinez recently.
No, we saw him off the back, chasing in amongst the cars, looking like he was coming back in, but maybe he wasn't. Then again, if anyone can hide in a group like that, I thought it's him as well. Asparen continues, but he is now just 32 seconds ahead, and he's actually looking back, so he knows they're closing in. The question is, what's going to happen if, as and when he's caught? Is that an opportunity for a counter-attack, maybe if he is to be caught? Let's see, though. The way this race is going today, these conditions, as you mentioned earlier, Adam, can make strange things happen. I would not be surprised if we now go from 30 seconds back up to a minute again, although it does seem to be now coming down, not in his favour.
Yeah, I think now it's going to really come down, especially going on to this next climb. Asparen is going to start feeling it, especially as the road goes up and the attacks are starting to come from behind. The riders will try and take advantage of this next climb with a fast downhill before the final climb starts. So riders that are not that confident with climbing with the best of the best will want to try and take advantage of this next climb coming up to try and create that little bit of a gap to anticipate the move on the final climb. And if they can get a big enough gap on the next downhill before the last climb, how long they could hold on that for. So I think for Asparen it's going to be curtains, I'd say, at the top of this climb.
It's a very impressive ride by him today, though. He's definitely got the staying power. Doesn't seem too affected by the weather either. And what looked like at first a sort of slightly surprise move, he's no doubt the man of the match today, Xavier Asparen. And he is making them work hard to chase him back as well. And more Groupama FDG jerseys now coming back towards the front. If Lenny Martinez isn't there, then is it a day for Thibaut Pinot?
I'd say so. The way he was going yesterday, I mean, he will be one of the two leaders out of that team today. It's just what the other riders can do within that peloton. A very reduced peloton as well.
Absolutely. If you are just recently joining us, folks, you might not have been with us all the way through our live coverage. We've had exactly the same conditions right the way from the start at about 10:15 this morning in Poligny. For this, the 6th edition of the Tour du Jura, and we're watching the attacking going now. Clément Berthet, by the looks of it, the strong man yesterday on the final climb, looked so good on the slopes of Montfaucon yesterday, looking good again today. Going on the attack for AG2R Citroën.
Just trying to put the pressure off Francis de Jure and on Cofidis here. Try and get a move going, but Francis de Jure just trying to respond to it. I wonder how long that rider can hold on for. In the background there, if they can bring this back, Thibaut Pinot is just sat second wheel behind his teammate, and it does look like that gap is coming down. You can see it stringing out more and more. I'm still looking. Is that Martinez just stuck behind Pinot there? I've still not seen him as of yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen him either. I'm not sure he's there, Adam, but we'll keep looking. Here we go. This is going to be the catch. And this is that fascinating moment where just because the lead rider is being caught doesn't mean others have to attack and roll over the top, but it so often does happen. It's a pressing of the reset button. Race back together, front end of the race back together anyway, and an opportunity for new attacks to roll through. Getting to the business end now. We're going to be seeing quite a lot of rain jackets coming off, I think, on this climb. This is the Côte de Mesnil. Again, looking through that group, just trying to work out exactly where everyone is. Thibaut Pinot, jacket off as well.
Victor Lafay's just sat there, just out the saddle in the red. Yesterday's winner, obviously.
And this is the second move with an Arkea Samsic rider to go in.
Francis de Jure still the same rider on the front, just setting that hard tempo, allowing riders to go up to the road, but this is perfect. Just one rider up the road is absolutely fine. Keep things together, disencourage people from attacking a little bit, and let that one rider, a little bit like Narns Pettis before, to be ultimately that carrot for them, just drifting out in front, getting up a 15-20 second lead maybe onto the next climb. Your leader behind should be able to bring that back, but stranger things have happened.
This looks like Ewan Costu, the young Frenchman for Arkea Samsic, on that interesting new Bianchi they're riding this year. Adam, they had a change of bikes, of course. I think they were on Canyons last year, weren't they? This is the bike that had, correct me if I'm wrong, you might remember this, had some interesting fairings about it. You can see them on the head tube, actually, or where they would be. These outlawed kind of additional rubberized fairings around the head tube to deflect the air.
Yeah, they had to get rid of them because the UCI didn't allow them. So the bikes, if you buy them at home, they will get that nice little flare, but if you're in the pro peloton, they've had to trim them off.
Fascinating, isn't it? That's not necessarily an indication that they're performance enhancing, that they are that much faster. Or maybe it is, I don't know. I haven't seen the evidence or the reasoning behind it, but it is.
I don't think he'll be worried about that with his rain jacket flapping all over the show at the minute. Doing a solid ride, though. He's put a lot of distance into these guys behind. One of the Arkea riders just looking back, see where his teammates are, see where everyone else is. So he's got his teammate up the road, which is great. Another one of his teammates moving up on the right-hand side in an all-black rain jacket.
Yeah, I was wrong. It's Alessandro Veri. If that's correct, I'm presuming they've seen his race number with the 36 on the side. Very similar build to Ewan Costu. So an Italian on the French team, which over the last couple of years has become far more multinational, this Arkea Samsic team. They do have a Luxembourger in Michael Rice in this race. And Christian Rodriguez made the move to this team as well. He's in the race. We've not seen much of him. Rodriguez, who was with Total Energies for the last couple of years. Very talented climber. And their big name, I suspect, today is Kevin Vauquelin, the Frenchman. I think he's still in here. And we're losing riders off the back of this group all the time, but there is a long descent after this, and they'll know that. There's an opportunity for that little group of riders we can see off the back there to find their way back in, if not on the climb, on the quite long descent. It's got to be at least 10k of downhill into the next valley, Adam, I'd have thought, before the finish.
Yes, pretty much 25k's to go. They're not far from the top of the next climb. I shall just check my stats. At the top of the climb, the very, very top before they do start to drop down is 22k's to go. It does flatten off a little bit before they do drop down, but yeah, another just under 3k's, and then that valley from the top of the climb until the very, very bottom slopes is 18k, which about 3.5, 4k's of that is slightly draggy just before it does start to ramp up properly. So it will tick down very quickly, and especially on the descent, you will want to stay warm. It's not a super technical, twisty downhill either before they get onto that final climb. So trying to stay warm and try and stay on the pedals will be quite difficult in this weather, I'd say, but I think nearing the end of the peloton they'll be all pushing on quite nicely.
It's a good move by Alessandro Veri, the Italian for the French Arkea Samsic team. One of the youngsters in that team, along with Ewan Costu and Kevin Vauquelin. Not quite as young as Vauquelin, who's the youngest in there. And there's jackets and gilets being discarded all the time at the moment. Don't worry, folks. They will be, I'm sure, picked up by the team cars as they come back. And it's the same for Vere. Gets his rain jacket off.
Down to his other rain jacket.
Yeah, double rain jacket. That was handy, the team car being there. He'd have seen that one coming. So this second layer, Adam, just thinking about the layering in the rain like this is what you were referring to. Was it the Gabba you were referring to earlier, this sort of waterproof inner layer?
It's what basically the two riders have got on here, the AG12 rider and Pinot just behind, is that it's not a full waterproof layer, but it keeps the drivel off. But it's a very, very warm jacket, especially when it gets wet. It does hold it quite nicely and keep you warm. So that underneath, over the top of your race jersey, and then a jacket which just, hopefully repels the rain quite well over the top of that as well. So warmth underneath, then an outer layer, which is basically a bin bag over the top to stop the rain getting in if possible. It will happen when they test the jacket in the factories where they test it for hours on end, but when you're in a bike race and you've got water coming from left, right and centre, doesn't matter what you've got on, you will always get wet.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it looks a little bit, they're almost a little bit more, not neoprene, but neoprene-y. They've got a cling to them, haven't they? A thickness. Great jerseys they are for the cold. And the name came from Gabriel Rasch. Gabba, that was his nickname. Helped Castelli, I think, were the original ones to design it. But Gabba didn't get anything from that. So RKS Samsic on the front foot. An Italian, Alessandro Vere, dangling just 11 seconds off the front of a Groupama FDG-led select peloton, which still contained, as far as we can see, all the big names for today. They're so heavily wrapped up. I'm trying to check whether that is Kevin Vauquelin's second wheel there. He's got the goatee beard. It's around about his build, but he's a long way up the group. The only other person that could be is Maxime Bouet, but I'm just literally looking through the rain to try and figure out where they all are. 30 riders, something like that now here in this group, I would suspect.
If that.
If that, yeah.
Gone over the top of their climb now, and this is just the rolly bit before they properly do start to drop down. It's going to be a fast and furious descent, this one. As I said, not super technical, not quite a super fast descent, but one that if you're in the peloton, you can get a nice bit of recovery. If you're out in front, you still need to push on quite a lot to hold your speed on.
I'm wondering whether Xavier Asparin has hung on in this group. I
doubt it.
That's what I'm thinking. There's quite a lot of leg warmers coming off. Guillaume Martin, leg warmers coming off. One of the Kern Farmer riders in there. I think the only Kern Farmer rider left in this group now still. His leg warmers are coming off as well. If I'm not mistaken, I think there's some gels being handed around the group there as well. I think that was one of the Groupama FDG riders handing his gel to one of the riders from Burgos Biache. I might be wrong, but if that's the case, it's a nice touch. I'd have thought picking up feeds from team carers and stuff at the roadside is even harder when your hands are as cold and wet as they must be, Adam.
Yep, trying to get a grip on a bottle, just get a grip on anything, a rain jacket, a bottle, a gel, anything like that. It will be very, very difficult. This man in front though, Vere, gloves off. I like that.
Yeah, still only 21 years of age, but he's also had some excellent under-23 results as well.
Pino does look to be shouting at his teammate. You can just see him really shouting at him, demanding something. He must be feeling good today. A little bit of a back stretch there from Pino as well. We all know about his back plunge that he's had, so fingers crossed that's all right. But there'll be the instructions there from Pino. Get on the front. What are you doing back here? Go and help.
Yeah, he is definitely up for it. And as Adam and I have said on a couple of occasions, we cannot see Lenny Martinez in net. I don't think he's made it back in after we saw him back in the cars. We might well be wrong.
Yeah, we don't quite know what happened. It might just be the cold getting into his bones as well a little bit today. You can really not feel good if you cannot warm up whatsoever. So he might have, just not being managed to warm up, not feeling great on the bike and not being able to get the power out that he wants to because he is so cold. So Pino, Lenny Martinez is not in there. Numero uno in the team now.
It does look that way. And that was Ewan Costu just swinging off there. So the Frenchman for Arkea Samsic is in this group. Arkea Samsic with good numbers. Groupama FDG with, as Adam has said, by the looks of it, Thibaut Pinot as their number one. He's certainly calling the shots in there.
They'll be thankful of this road surface. A little bit different to the one they're being on, not as much spray.
And those sports directors, mechanics, and whoever else is in the following cars behind now having to deal with absolutely sodden, caked in mud and dirt, leg warmers and various bits of clothing being just thrown in, slapped in through the car window. Lovely. And for the riders who are going to be continuing and the teams who are doing the final of these 3 races here in the Franche-Comté region, the Tour de Doubs tomorrow, they'll have to try and get some of that kit warm and dry because not all the teams will have umpteen supplies of extra kit all the time. My gosh, right in behind the motorbike here. This is quick in these wet conditions.
Very quick indeed, but fast flowing corners as well. There's no switchbacks as we've seen as of yet. Just looking at the map, there's not too many tight corners. Alessandro Vere, this will be a very, very difficult one. He'll get a free wheel through these corners, hold the speed if he's a confident descender. Some of these flat bits here where the peloton can really start to take advantage of him not being able to sprint out of the corners as much.
20 kilometres to go. 25 seconds to the Italian Alessandro Vere, who has teammates sitting in behind, including Kevin Vauquelin. Their young French up-and-coming star for Arkea Samsic, who's been swapped in to this race today, having not ridden the Classic Grand Besançon Doubs yesterday. And they're headed now northward, due northward in the direction of Bracon. They then start, once they've got to the very bottom of this descent, they start the long climb, and it is a long climb. It actually climbs from outside 10k to go, all the way to the finish at Montpoupet. I'll make the climbing actually starting from about 12k to go, but it's very, very gradual at first. It's in, thankfully, as you'd want it in a race like this, the last 4k where it steepens to 12 and then 16% nearer the top as well. It will be a very select group. The last year it was a sprint à deux, 2 riders going to the finish together. Ben O'Connor and Jesus Herrada, very, very close between those two actually in the end last year. Ben O'Connor getting the better of Herrada, showing how well he can sprint actually, the big Aussie, particularly the top of a climb like that. And the year before, Benoit Cosnefroy was sprinting out of a much bigger leading group. I think it was some 7 or 8 riders in actual fact. Much bigger, a little bit bigger I should say, but certainly a leading group of riders who opened up the sprint together. Are we going to look back on this attack by Alessandro Vere and say what a wonderful, well-timed attack it was if he goes on to win, Adam? You never know.
You never know indeed. It would be a tough ask for him. 18 Ks to go, all this energy that he's having to spend here on the downhill. Yes, it's not as much as if he was on the flat or going uphill, but I think with that last climb, even though it is categorised as only 4 kilometres, the bottom slopes, as we've discussed already, it does add up to around 9 kilometres at an average of 5.5% all the way to the top. So it is a fast climb for the first half of it, but the last 4k is quite brutal at 8% as well. But it's a good move by Vere. I'm sure he wished he had one more rider with him, maybe just to share this workload on this not super fast downhill that he's on now.
He's already travelled a fair bit this season. Started his year in Adelaide by riding the Schwalbe Classic Criterium the day before starting the Tour Down Under. I rode the whole of the Tour Down Under. The best stage result being the final stage to Mount Lofty, showing his climbing ability. Seems like an age ago now, doesn't it, Adam, that we're bringing viewers that stage to Mount Lofty, you and I up in the middle of the night, talking through that fantastic racing. Jay Vine getting the win, and now preparing himself for his attack on the Giro, of course, Jay Vine, getting over an injury, knee injury, talking this week about how he's quite happy being out of racing, getting on with his own training, because he's sort of, maybe it's the Zwifter in his history, in his background, Adam, that ability to be able to just plug away and do his own thing away from the main peloton and bring himself, he hopes, back into good form for the Giro. That'll be interesting to watch.
Could be a very good watch this year, the Giro d'Italia. A lot of big stars doing it. So he's going to be good, and it'll be nice to see how Jay Vine gets on.
Yeah, let's hope he can come back injury-free and really peaking as well. He's a fascinating rider to watch. Quite the individual, quite unusual in a good way. Still really finding his feet as well in the peloton, understanding how to get the best out of himself. I got that sense even in the Tour Down Under as well, and surprising himself even now with I think just what the level is that he's reached. You're right, it will be fascinating. It comes around. What have we got now? 3 weeks to the Giro? Start the Giro? 2 to 3 weeks? 3 weeks?
3 weeks pretty much, bang on today. So yeah, 3 weeks today, the Giro kicks off. And we've got 3 weeks of action, along with myself, Orla, Dan and Robin McHugh. We'll be bringing the action from the breakaway.
Fantastic. Very much looking forward to it. Of course, before then we have the Classics to close out, of course, the Ardennes Classics and Amstel Gold starting tomorrow. We didn't really finish our little preview earlier, but we have of course mentioned Tom Pidcock. We've mentioned for the men's race, this is Tadej Pogacar, Neilson Powless also down to ride, and he could be a very interesting rider with how he's been going at the start of this season across lots of different kinds of races as well. Neilson Powless is really growing into kind of flourishing into the full sense of his ability as well, isn't he? He's a good shout for tomorrow, I'd have thought, Adam.
He will be, yeah, definitely. I think he's fifth place in Flanders that it was, on terrain that doesn't necessarily, we're not used to seeing him on. But definitely tomorrow's terrain, definitely one that suits him, so it'd be great to see him there, and with the full backing of EF behind him as well, it'd be great to watch, and I'm sure he'll be right up there at the pointy end.
Yeah. Our colleague Dan Lloyd posted a replay of Rob Hatch's commentary of Mathieu van der Poel's incredible win at Amstel Gold just this morning. Was it last night or this morning? And I rewatched it, and it just reminded me what an incredible finale that was for the men's race. What was it, 2 or 3 years ago now? 2 years ago? 3 years ago? That Van der Poel came through from that chase group, led the chase group all the way across to them, and then out-sprinted everyone. Incredible. Absolutely wonderful finale. And none of those races that's obviously in quite stark contrast to this and yesterday's Classic Grand Besançon, in that you don't need to finish up a whacking great hill in order to make it exciting. How many of our great classic races actually finish on the flat after all the sort-out's been done before, and we get that fantastic tactical finale, the closing up of gaps, the chasing down, can they stay out there sort of served up by the hills that are around them. Amstel Gold, a classic example of that with that finale. Yep, you can catch it all tomorrow. Do not forget, right here at the home of cycling, Carlton Kirby, Brian Smith, Marty McDonald and Danny Christmas bringing you the men's and women's races tomorrow. Thibaut Pinot is very twitchy again, giving orders and instructions here by the looks of it. But while all that's going on, Agile Citroën are going to have another go.
They've been very, very active, AG12. They've sent a lot of riders up the road, or tried to send a lot of riders up the road from very early on. They wanted to make this hard, but it's come to no prevail yet at the minute. And I just think, I don't know what I'd be doing. You need to keep trying to stick to your game plan, which you want to do. They want to put the pressure on FDJ. He can jump across to Vere in the front here. That would be a great little move, but it's so late on in the race, coming late on. Positioning of the team, position of Ben O'Connor, if he's feeling good in these conditions. He's still in there, so he must be all right. But yeah, you've got to take your hats off to AG12. Not really done any of your work so far in the peloton trying to control things, but really making it hard for FDJ and Cofidis, who have done the majority of the chasing throughout today.
This is their youngster, the 21-year-old Bastien Tranchant, who wasn't racing yesterday, so he's got fresh legs, and he's kicked well clear. He's still got his winter gloves on, rain gloves on, leg warmers too. And I think that probably indicates that he's not necessarily their chosen man for the day, but this is a little teaser, a little tester to see how close he can get to Verret and see what happens behind. It certainly takes the pressure off the Agi Desert Citroën team. I haven't seen much of Ben O'Connor. I think he sat back a little. He might be spending 10k getting off his various layers, Adam, I guess, but he's certainly keeping himself hidden in that group.
He is, and I think that's the key in these weather conditions as well, is that when you always, well, it's any weather conditions, if you can see a rider all the time and they're very visible within the peloton, they're in the wind a lot, and when you can't see a rider, if they're hidden and they suddenly pop out of nowhere, they've done something very right within the race. They've stayed hidden, they've stayed on the wheels, they've stayed in shelter almost. They're not having to push as much power down on the pedals, and that's always a good sign, I think.
And it doesn't look like Bastien Tronchon's getting quite... Well, actually, no, having a look at that, it's foreshortening the gap as we look from the camera in front of him. If we could swing around, I think he might be able to see Alessandro Verret. I wonder if we can see Tronchon in the background.
You'll have to have X-ray vision through them rocks.
No, he's further around the corner then, by the looks of it. The Italian is pressing on well. Really good ride by him, Raquel Samsic, coming pretty soon after the last of our breakaway riders was caught, Xavier Asparin, the last survivor of the 12 riders who were originally clear in this race.
These are the lower slopes now, even though it's still quite fast, still not too difficult on this flat road. It does start to gradually just go up. They'll take a turn ever so shortly, and they'll be on draggy roads that just drag further and further and further up. The gradient gets steeper and steeper. As I said, about 4Ks, 4.5Ks at around 3.5–4%, and then it does kick up for the last part of it, which is at 8.5%, and that's the last 4Ks all the way up to the finish line. So the latter part of the climb being the hardest part, but by no means it's not just a 4-kilometre climb, with the lower slopes being at just over 4% as well.
This group are riding southward on the Route de Mouchard, which rolls along the river valley, following La Fruze, which is the tributary to the Doubs, which flows down the middle of this valley. And it's still a Groupama FDG-led group, but a much reduced group. This is our peloton. We started off with 117 riders today, and we're down to really just this lot. I suspect there is probably still another group behind, but it's been a long, cold, hard day out today across the 166 kilometres as it will be by the time we get to the finish up there on top of Mont Poupée. First time this race has used that finish, and I think certainly on paper it looks like it's going to be a very fitting finale. They will all warm up by the top of Mont Poupée, that is for sure.
Yeah. They will or they won't. For the riders that will have probably blown their doors off, they probably will be quite chilly riding up that climb. It is only about 5 degrees out there, but they've been in this rain from start to finish, so majority of them, even though the bodies will be warm, they still will be cold. Hands, feet.
One of the Total Energies riders there trying to wave the camera motorbike away. I'm trying to understand that because, of course,
doing a great ride. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think it's just the only reason the Direct Energy rider is doing that is to make FDJ's life harder. They've got the responsibility of riding in front. They've taken it upon themselves, but they're losing time. So it's not that it's playing into their hands whatsoever. They just want to make FDJ's life a lot harder. But Verret here is doing a fantastic job.
Yeah, he really is.
He's got left for this last climb.
Yeah, that's it. 10k to go. Alessandro Verret, the Italian, is in the lead. 30 seconds over... Hang on, he's got, 47 seconds over the peloton and 30 seconds over Bastien Tronchon, the Frenchman who's chasing him. That's a good gap, and I guess it remains to be seen because the climb has already started now. We're on the final climb. This is it. It's going to drag on. Of course, it drags on for 9.6 kilometres, as you can imagine, all the way up to the top of Mont Poupée. You're right, Adam. What has he got left in those legs? Because he has... It might just be that he's pulling a few faces as well. He has been ripping. He's kept the gap open. Yeah, I tell you what, if the face is indicative of what he's going through right now, this is going to be a hard climb. Very hard.
It will be. I think if he was in the peloton or where he is now, it is still going to be a very, very hard climb for him. But he'll just stick to his tempo, stick to his watts almost that he's doing, and just, you know, concentrate on his effort. Don't go into the red too much. Just stay right at the top of your threshold and just try and hold that tempo all the way to the top. Because he has to remember the latter part of the climb, the last 4 kilometres, ramps up. So he just needs to stay within himself in the bottom slopes. And hopefully that 49 seconds that he has now is big enough to get him to the finish. But with there no attacks yet from the likes of Pino, from Ben O'Connor, the riders that were expecting tonight, Victor Lafay, winner of yesterday. I'm sure we're going to see this gap start to tumble down. 46 seconds, 3 seconds gone already.
There is no doubt, is there, that this is about Thibaut Pinot. We wondered yesterday whether their sort of Arnaud Démare style lead-out formation, the rider at the back being their chosen rider. It was the case with Lenny Martinez. Well, today that rider has stripped down the most as well of his team as well. He's continuing to strip down as we watch him. Thibaut Pinot, I think, about to take off his rain layer. Yes, he is. So it is about Thibaut Pinot today, the 32-year-old, in what could be his final season of racing. He said it will be unless he wins that French national title. What a ride by this man. Alessandro Vere, whose last race was stage 2 of the Exulia Basque Country. I must admit, I don't know what happened to him in there, but he didn't finish the second stage, and that was him out of the race as well. Right back at the beginning of April. Certainly looking like the form is there. This is Bastien Tranchant. Gave it a good dig, the young Frenchman. But he is just about to be reeled back in by Groupama FDJ. And this is Enzo Palini, who's doing the chasing. The Frenchman for Groupama FDJ. He's been on the front quite a lot.
He has been. He's been on the front for a long time, but he's also been on the front since Bere went up the road as well. And he's had a little bit of help from a teammate who has now dropped off. His job's done, the one that Pino was screaming at earlier to get on the front. And that gap's still 45 seconds. Bere is holding on very nicely. You can see there these bottom slopes, as we discussed, Jez, that not too difficult, quite fast. A lot of the riders still within that, on the big ring still. It's the last 4K that we're concentrating on that ramps up to average gradient. So 8%. There's Victor Lafay in the background. He's got Guillaume Martin just sat right in front of him.
Yep, Kevin Vauquelin as well is the rider who is hanging on to the back wheel of Thibaut Pinot, who's managed to get that rain layer off. Still got it in his hand though. There's 2 riders from Burgos Biache back there as well. There are at least 2, if not 3, Euskaltel Euskadi riders. And there's 1 rider right on the very back as well from CIC Nantes-Atlantique, the Nantes-Atlantique team. Definitely 1 in there.
Pino now with 1 teammate left. This is not ideal for him. The teams might have to take up that chase. Another 2 seconds just knocked off now to Vere, who's still in the front. 7.8 Ks to go.
And of course, all the while, this takes all the pressure off the Arkea Samsic riders who sit 3rd and 4th with Vere up there. Cofidis quite a lot quieter since Groupama FDJ have taken over it. They were the ones who did the lion's share of the work yesterday, really, weren't they? Groupama FDJ, particularly coming into the foot of Montfaucon. Can they make it work? And how much, I guess, can Thibaut Pinot do by himself? He's still giving instructions, Adam, by the looks of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, with 1 rider left in front of him, he needs to give him as much instruction as he can and just try and encourage him to go on for as long as he can. Because ultimately, the pace will drop with Arkea behind it, then attacks will start to come, then it's all up to Pinot to cover those moves and try and stay on top of them, which, for 1 man, is not easy.
He still looks good up front as well. The young Italian, Vere, looking back down the road to see what's coming up. 42 seconds. He's not actually losing much at the moment. In fact, he's not losing anything. There's other jerseys in play back there as well. There's definitely a couple of the Leopard TOGT Pro Cycling Team riders in there. I can just see them with that light and dark blue kind of speckled, mottled effect across their shoulders. Ben O'Connor sits fifth wheel, last year's winner, still with his casquette and, yeah, Gabba-style rain layer, the black layer with the white sleeves. Kevin Vauquelin is the tall Arkea Samsic rider in third. Thibaut Pinot pulling all kinds of faces, which probably doesn't mean anything because he does that all the time. 20 riders? 15, 20 riders?
I'd say 20 riders. I think it'll stay like this right up until the point where they kick up in the last 4 kilometres, where the gradients increase, get steeper. For now, you can definitely save a little bit by just rolling on the wheels ever so slightly, sitting back a little bit, biding your time, being patient.
And the road just continues like this. This climb's going to get harder and harder. This is in slightly steepening gradients. And a couple of K's time is when they'll hit the first double figures, up to 12%. And then I'll remind people it steepens at its greatest, up to 16% in that final kilometre, the start of that final kilometre. I actually think, in amongst the rain jackets and rain, this isn't Enzo Palini. I think it's Lorenzo Germani, the Italian rider for Groupama FDG. My apologies for getting that one wrong.
Need to pay Raj for the work he's been doing so far, because it's been phenomenal. I thought we'd been long gone early on the slopes on this climb, but he's looking after Pinot quite nicely here. 37 seconds, so it is trickling down just very, very slowly indeed. Just under 6 kilometres to go. I do feel when they get onto them slopes, we've not had any big attacks from within this peloton yet on a harder gradient either, so I can imagine when the attacks do come, that gap is going to come down a lot faster than what it has been doing. But Vere still doing a stellar job out front.
He's doing a very good job, isn't he? I thought you were about to use that one. I just get in there before you do.
Not quite.
I hope he wins. We've got that one queued up. He would deserve it as well. What a ride.
He looks shocked.
Yeah, I know. Very surprised. He's
been doing a great job. I mean, he went at 17 Ks to go, 18 Ks to go.
Yeah.
Solo rode away from the peloton and was just more than that, 23 Ks to go. He's only just, well, he's increased his lead right up until he got onto this climb. Then the gap has been going down, so no doubt he will be feeling it in his legs by now. 100% sure.
Ben O'Connor is still constantly shaking those hands out, as he has been for the last 2.5, 3 hours, non-stop, since we've been on air, just trying to get some warmth in there.
It's a long way for the blood down to those hands. He's a very tall man.
That's what it is, yeah.
He's taking his rain jacket off now, though. Oh, no, that's Nance Peters.
Yeah, Nance Peters looking like he's on the radio. Oh, there you go. That was an indication of what he's doing. I think he's telling the team car where he's chucked it, maybe. I'd like to think that anyway. Otherwise, there's going to be, well, I'm sure it'll be picked up by someone, a free Agidesert Citroën Gilet. Germani's still going. This is really, really impressive. He'll know, of course, that he's the last man. It might not be ideal for Groupama FDG in terms of protecting Pinot. Maybe they'd have wanted to still have at least a couple there. I'm presuming Germani is the last in the group. I don't think they've got anyone hanging out the back. I don't think they dare, what with the barking orders that Thibaut Pinot's been given. No, it's much reduced, that group, isn't it? The dark blue jerseys you can see at the back are definitely of the riders from the CIC U-Nantes-Atlantique team. And there's a couple of them. That might be interesting to see. Their best rider yesterday was Jordan Gigat, who was 19th. They also had Yael Yolande, who was 20th. Those two. I'm suspecting it's those two riders sitting here as they are in the top 20 on the road. So these are the final 5 kilometres of the 6th edition of the Tour de Jura with me, Jez Cox, and Adam Blythe. We have one rider in the lead who's doing a brilliant ride, Alessandro Vere, the Italian for the French Arkea Samsic team. And he's still holding off this chasing peloton, which is being led by Lorenzo Germani, and he has behind him one of the most popular French riders in the sport, without any doubt. Thibaut Pinot, who said he is in his last year of racing. And a good opportunity today to get a win in this UCI 1.1 race. Pinot just sitting off a little bit through that corner there as we go back past the tractors, as you pointed out, Adam, coming back this way as we did in the opposite direction earlier in the day before we went and took in this big finishing loop of 65 kilometres we've been through the river-dotted, forested terrain of the Jura Mountains, right in the north of the Jura Mountains, centre-east of the centre of France, up against the Swiss border. Beautiful countryside. I think it would have looked a lot more beautiful today had the weather not been like this, but it is still springtime. And he goes again. Jimani goes again. He's looking to set up Pinot. Last dig, yeah?
Last dig. This is all in now. He hasn't got much left in the tank. He'll look over his shoulder. Job done. And Pinot straight on the attack once again. But it's all up to Pinot now. He really has to get rid of people, try and, you know, isolate as many people as he can, because he is on his own. The team has done a fantastic job with him so far, but without any teammates in there to cover any more moves, he needs to create the move himself, try and drop people, disencourage them from attacking as well, because, as I said, he isn't going to be able to respond to 3, 4, 5 attacks constantly all on his own.
Who can counter? They were looking around to see if there was going to be a counter. I think watching Nons Peters moving up there is thinking, is he going to counter-attack? Kevin Vauquelin there in the red of Arkea Samsic looks really good second wheel. He didn't race yesterday. Most of the riders we're looking at right here raced the Classic Grand Besançon yesterday. He didn't, though. And he looks good second wheel, doesn't he?
He does, but look at Lefay in the background. He didn't respond to that attack immediately. He just found himself there as Ben O'Connor goes on the attack. Lefay just sat right on the back. Guillaume Martin just letting the other riders doing the work as well. 2 Cofidis riders right towards the front, but O'Connor has been sat nicely all day. The team has made it difficult for the other riders in the peloton, trying to force them to attack and make their job a lot harder. O'Connor has just been sat there patiently waiting for this last climb. That wasn't a full-on attack by O'Connor, though, but it's definitely part of a 1-2. Soon as his leader, Ben O'Connor, is caught, last year's winner, O'Connor's going backwards as well, and Nons Peters' attack just stringing them back out again. Ben O'Connor losing the back wheel of Thibaut Pinot as well. Yeah, he's got Guillaume Martin just in front of Pinot. These hard bursts of speed. Nons Peters really digging in, trying to stretch them out a little bit. He stripped right down. You saw O'Connor still with his rain jacket on. That little dig might have been the setup for this move here. Victor Lefay just off the back of that as they do start to finally reel in Alessandro Vere from Sunset. This is the really steep part of the course now as well. This is 12-13%. It steepens towards the top, don't forget, in that final kilometre, but this is the second steepest part of this final climb of Mont Poupée. What a ride by Alessandro Vere of the Arkea Samsic, who's, well, you can see, went clear. He looks like he's dressed for a different race to the rest of them now. They've all had a chance to strip down. He didn't. He attacked when everyone was still fully clothed and warmed up, and he now finds himself in the leading group. Has a little look around to see who's there. Let's see what Alessandro Vere's got left, because he is impressive today. Not immediately absorbed by the group either. And knowing now, I suspect that he is working for Kevin Vauquelin, who's right in the middle of that group. Yeah, that's what this is going to be about now, I guess, Adam. What has he got left in there to work for Vauquelin, who sits just in front of Guillaume Martin, concentrating? Yeah, he's doing a good job at the minute, just setting that tempo still, riding himself back into the race. His mindset will change when he has a different job to do, but Lefay here, just right on the back. O'Connor's ridden him back on. As I said earlier, Lefay is not responding to these attacks. He's just riding at his own tempo, letting them go away from him, letting them come back. He doesn't want to go into that red zone as they go through 3Ks to go. He's letting the other riders swing the punches and just sit back, wait for the acceleration to happen, ride himself back on. Pinot gets rid of his gloves now as well. Lefay, we know how fast he is on the finish on a climb like this. If he can hang on to the top and there's not too many more of those attacks, could he make it the double? He did look so good at the finish yesterday up against Lenny Martinez. Calm and concentrated, sitting at the back, just up behind Ben O'Connor as Ben O'Connor takes off his rain jacket. Igor Arrieta is the Kern Farmer rider, the tall Kern Farmer rider in green, sitting second wheel there, just behind Alessandro Vere, who's turned himself from attacking all-out race-winning rider to now super domestic on this final climb of Mont Poupée for Kevin Vauquelin, who's done nothing so far. Vauquelin, the 21-year-old climber,
He's just sat and surfed the wheels, waited, hung in there. I just think there might be a move in Vauquelin ready yet to come.
There's another move going now. Guillaume Martin straight on the attack. Pinot following him. First attack from the Cofidis riders, the one of two. You can see Lafay in the background. He's got rid of his rein jack and look, not out the saddle, accelerating a little bit, but not fighting to stay on that wheel straight away. Just letting that gap go out. As I said, just playing with, not playing with them, but just sticking within his zone. He doesn't want to go into the red, so just letting that acceleration happen, let it come back to him, let it happen again. He's just sticking to what he knows how to do.
We're getting ever closer to the very steepest parts. Nons Peters looks good in the white there of Agida's Citroën team up against the other leaders. We've now got, what, 6 or 7 riders now in the lead. And this time, now at last, Kevin Vauquelin goes. It's the first time we've seen him do anything so far, the 21-year-old for RKS Samsic. This is the guy who I mentioned at the beginning of the day, really being talked up by the French cycling press as their next big climber in the Grand Tours. He's still only 21 years of age, but he's made a decisive move at this point. Is this him riding clear? The chase is being led by Guillaume Martin and Thibaut Pinot rocking and rolling to get back on terms.
Yeah, he's got that nice clear gap at the minute. He's just ahead of them, trying to settle into his rhythm, open up that gap as quick as he can. Nans Peters are all looking at each other in the background. Nans Peters, Thibaut Pinot, Guillaume Martin's just still on attack. Victor Lafay is still within there as well. Ben O'Connor just getting himself back on.
Looking like Nans Peters is actually the strongest of these two today, and he had a right old go yesterday as well. It might not have been the aim. Let's remember that Ben O'Connor is the defending champion in this race, having won over Jesus Herrada 1 year ago. But look at this. Kevin Vauquelin is into his rhythm. Now, if he can stay here and let the others start messing around behind, he's going to take this one. He's got 2K to go. He yet has the steepest slopes to come, though.
I was going to say, let's not speak too soon. 2K at this speed. He's going to take about 8-9 minutes still. So still a long way and a long effort with behind. There's not been an attack since. They're all just playing around, looking at each other. No one wants to take it up as Guillaume Martin responds now. Pinot straight on the wheel. Victor Lafay just getting himself going once again.
Thibaut Pinot is so hard to read. The way he pedals, his style is so unique. I find it almost impossible to tell whether he's struggling or whether he's absolutely shredding, Adam. You know, it never looks easy.
Both.
Both at the same time. O'Connor not on a good day, is he? Or at least not responding to the spikes. It's not an even effort, this.
No, O'Connor's not the kind of rider that does respond to spikes. He needs to settle into his rhythm a little bit, and with these hard efforts that Martin is putting in right now, that's not going to be what suits Ben O'Connor, but just sticking to his own rhythm and just, it's the little bits in between where they back off a little bit. That's when O'Connor can come back into it.
Very close now to that final kilometre where we'll see the road really steep, and Kevin Vauquelin, who's had a great start to this season with RKS Samsic, the 21-year-old, is still out there, but the chase being led by Guillaume Martin.
Lafay is going backwards as well, getting rid of his teammate Guillaume Martin there. It is up to these guys, but I think Guillaume Martin, he needs to, you know, either try and get rid of them, slow down, accelerate once again. He doesn't want to get rid of Lafay because he's the faster out of the two in a sprint, even at the top of the climb.
He's come back though. Victor Lafay, yesterday's winner in the Classic Grand Besançon Double, and Nons Peters goes again. I was wondering what the Agida's Citroën man had got left. Turns out he's got a bit. Look at that, into the mist up there, where we see Kevin Vauquelin almost disappearing ahead of them into the mist that shrouds the top of Mont Poupée.
Over the top now, a little bit of flatter road for these guys to pick up the tempo on, especially this man, Kevin Vauquelin. He looks to be in his rhythm. He's settled down. He's not stopped starting like the other riders behind. 1K to go, pretty much.
He hadn't done anything, had he, Adam? He was just there, just waiting. He was always sitting second or third wheel, quite well up the group, but never seeing him having to jump across gaps or respond to much, really. And he's made one move, one decisive move. And at the moment, it's looking like a race-winning move too, because if they any hesitation behind him, well, there is no hesitation. Nons Peters is going again to see if he can use the steepest part there to jump over it. They are just about to hit the bit where it will really steepen to about 16%. And as I mentioned earlier, when we saw the pictures from the finish line, it is really nasty up here. The rain still hammering down, really misty too. They're climbing to the very top of Mont Poupée, 860, 870 metres above sea level. And Kevin Vauquelin Still looking good at this stage, 800 metres to go.
Yeah, he is looking good. He's in his own rhythm as well. He's not stopping and starting like the other riders behind. He looks over his shoulder, can't see anything because of that mist. And he's sitting now, he's into the last part of the race, really stepping on, trying to up those numbers, trying to get on top of the gear, really go into the red.
21-year-old Frenchman for Arkea Samsic, looking like he was almost starting to smile a little bit there as he looked back. You won't be able to see much because the mist is so thick up here. Nance Peters, I think, might have reached the end of his tether. My gosh, he's done some big digs in the last, kilometre. He's kept attacking. He's trying to come back again, getting back to Thibaut Pinot. Pinot has put his whole team behind this today. He's been really shouting at them and pushing them on to work for him today. Now he's got to deliver the goods, and the problem is I don't think any of these three have got an answer to Kevin Vauquelin, who's looked much better than them at this stage. This is the steepest part of the course.
Yeah, but Guillaume Martin just trying to settle in through them, trying to bring him back, make it hard for these riders behind. Nance Peters has managed to get himself back on. That says to me the pace just isn't hard enough, and it's not going to bring back this man with 600 metres to go. Thibaut Pinot not attacked once out of that group. Yeah, he attacked at the start at the bottom of this climb. Since then, he's just followed the wheels. Maybe he's got one last effort in him. Oh, he's on the front.
Thibaut Pinot out of the saddle, winding that bike from left to right to try and drill down the gap. We're being told 16 seconds, as you can see it. There's no way you can see anything. The mist is so thick up here on top of Mont Poupée. Really epic, nasty, tough conditions for the end of a really tough one-day race here in the Tour du Jura. And remarkably, Nance Peters comes back again. I'm not sure whether these are super fans or whether they're actually from the team.
There's Pinot going now. Pinot's going now. They are super fans. They're fans of Thibaut Pinot, the man that loves the goats. Has put us in acceleration just under 500 metres to go. A little dip in the road. This will work into the way of Nance Peters there if he can get rolling again. But Pinot straight on top of that gear. Another acceleration out the saddle. Another acceleration.
Oh, you always sense he's got that little bit more as well. Rather than looking back, he could do with getting on with it like this man has done. Kevin Vauquelin has just 250 metres left to go for Arkea Samsic, and the Frenchman has ridden everything perfectly today. His team just did enough. Alessandro Verre taking the pressure off him and others by being out there for so long, the Italian. And then when they were caught, Verre persisted and continued doing work on the front of the group, so Kevin Vauquelin didn't have to do anything. It flattens out from now on as well. He's into the easier part of the climb. Kevin Vauquelin's going to take this. The Tour du Jura is his, and what a ride by the 21-year-old Frenchman. He made that towards the end look not easy, but easier than the others did anyway, because they're making really hard work of this behind. Who's going to emerge from the mist to be the best of the rest? It's going to be Thibaut Pinot. Just behind him, Guillaume Martin. Great battle by those guys. Nance Peters, what a ride by him. Did not give up, kept attacking. And then last year's winner, the Australian Ben O'Connor, comes in 5th. What a day out. What a horrible, tough day. Beautiful terrain in the Jura Mountains. And Kevin Vauquelin cannot even undo his jersey. There's yesterday's winner, I should say, Victor Lafay. That's an impressive ride, Adam, wasn't it? You can see why people are talking him up.
Yeah, a very impressive ride indeed. He attacked once, made it count. Had the pleasure of having his teammate Verre up the road just beforehand, so he was able to follow the wheels. But yeah, brilliant ride by him and timed it very well indeed. Just as he said, went off the back of an attack of Guillaume Martin straight over the top when it was hard, and was able just to judge it beautifully all the way to the line in terms of his effort.
Well, we'll confirm for you the top 10, which is now completed imminently as soon as we have it.
There's the attack replay just over the top of Guillaume Martin after he finished an effort and just could never quite get on terms with him. See how quickly he sat down, just wanting to get into that rhythm. Did it beautifully.
Managed to lose his gloves as he came to the line, but he won't be worried about that. Through the thick mist at the top of Mont Poupée, overlooking the whole of the Franche-Comté region, Kevin Vauquelin takes the 6th edition of the Tour du Jura. That is a long, hard day out in those conditions, pouring with rain since the very start. Good day, though, for Bolton Equities Black Spoke. Again, very evident all the way throughout that team. A big breakaway of riders today. 12 riders that were 6 initially, became 12, and then that very impressive ride initially by Xavier Esparron out there by himself, and then the next rider to do that, of course, the teammate of Kevin Vauquelin, Alessandro Veri, the Italian, taking all the pressure off his team from that very select leading group by staying out there by himself. And these conditions, if anything, Adam, have worsened over the course of the race as well, because we were looking at these shots just before we came on air, and the mist wasn't even as bad as this. It's really rolled in and got nasty.
It's just been hell from start to finish for a lot of these riders today. It's not been pleasant whatsoever. A full, what have they been going for now? 4 hours, 12 minutes in this weather. Yeah, awful.
Well, let's hope the weather picks up for tomorrow's Tour de Doubs. We won't be bringing you coverage of it here at the Home of Cycling on Eurosport GCN, but it rolls on nonetheless. I haven't yet checked the weather forecast for Amstel, actually. It might be interesting to know whether it's what the weather's doing. Certainly on the eastern edge of France, the border between France and Switzerland, it's got particularly wet overnight last night and then into today too. Well, here is that top 10, top 12 even confirmed for you. Kevin Vauquelin, the 21-year-old Frenchman for Arkea Samsic, 4 hours and 22 minutes for his win ahead of Thibaut Pinot, who looked good at the finish, but just looked like he just needed that, not the extra gear, just needed to get on top of his leg speed more, something like that. Something didn't look quite right. Guillaume Martin, though, not getting the better of Thibaut Pinot. Nons Peters, lots of attacking coming into the finish. Last year's winner, Ben O'Connor, in 5th. Clément Berthet, again, another great ride for the AG Desert Citroën team, who get 4th, 5th and 6th today. Victor Lafay, yesterday's winner, in 7th, and Igor Arrieta hanging in there, the Kern Farmer man, for 8th and 1st Spaniard. In fact, the first non-Frenchman is Ben O'Connor in 5th, of course. Behind them, Igor Arrieta. Miguel Heidemann was the Leopard TOGT rider. And we can bring you some quotes our producers are sending us with quick interviews that have been taken after the finish. And this was a quote, direct quote, in actual fact, from our winner, Kevin Vauquelin. He said, "It was hard at the start of the race following my crash." So we must have missed that crash at the beginning, actually. That's news to us. But I felt good in the end. Vere did a strong work in the front. When I felt the moment, I went alone. Tactically, we were really strong today. We were always one step ahead of the others. I didn't race yesterday, but there's strong riders who are used to doing Grand Tours, so they're not disturbed by 2 races in 2 days. Good point. Kevin Vauquelin, one of those who didn't ride yesterday's classic Grand Besançon Doubs, but looked very good when he made that decisive final attack today. Understandably, the riders very keen to wrap up, get their layers on and get, I just suspect, the descent back down Mont Poupée. They'll have to be a little bit careful going back down there in the mist with the oncoming riders to get to the diversion where their team vehicles are parked. Been 2 great days of racing, Adam, hasn't it? Illustrating what this part of France is like. Narrow roads, undulations and good fun.
Well, good fun for us, Jez, watching it. I'm not sure they'd have had a lot of fun out there today, but yeah. It's been nice to see see the French countryside, see some great racing. And 2 very worthy winners over the last 2 days. It's been great.
Yes, very worthy winners in Kevin Vauquelin. And then, of course, yesterday's winner, Victor Lafay, there or thereabouts, looking like we thought he was going to come back at one point there at the finish. Victor Lafay, not quite enough, as we said, and as Adam mentioned, the rain, the persistent rain and cold and wet getting into your body can do funny things to riders on a day like this. Rider of the day, Adam?
Very.
Gotta be. He was very good as well, really good. Very impressed by him. 2 very impressive 21-year-olds for Arkea Samsic, Alessandro Veri and Kevin Vauquelin. Watch those names. They're going to be going good places, I suspect, in the next few years. to complete, by the way. I didn't mention that we had a nice collective of Spaniards just sitting at the bottom of the top 10. I mentioned that Miguel Heidemann, the German, was 9th for Leopard TOGT Pro Cycling, the now Danish team. There were Spaniards from 10th to 13th, in actual fact. Burgos Biachi had Jose Diaz. Unai Irabar of Euskaltel Euskadi was in 11th. Gotson Martin was in 12th. And Paleo Sanchez was the second of those purple-clad Burgos Biachi riders. Apologies, folks, for not bringing you any more pictures at the moment right now. We might be able to bring you coverage of the podium presentation. I will find that one out for you and let you know. We're watching live pictures from our host broadcasters on the ground over there in the Jura. I'll let you know what we're going to be bringing you in just a moment. In the meantime, as we wait to find out what we are going to be able to show you, let me just remind you what you have coming up in this fantastic week of racing. Today is Saturday, of course. Tomorrow, it's Amstel Gold Day. Men's race being brought to you by Carlton Kirby and Brian Smith, and the women's race being brought to you by Marty McDonald and Danny Christmas. All day tomorrow. Lock that in your diaries. Big classic, of course. Monday to Friday of next week, it's Rob Hatch and Adam Blythe bringing you the Tour of the Alps. And on Wednesday, Matt Stevens and I are going to bring you the men's La Flèche Wallonne, and Marty McDonald and Danny Christmas will bring you the Flèche Wallonne Féminine. And then, of course, it all builds towards next Sunday, and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Rob and Adam will be back on the mic for the men's race, and Marty McDonald, Danny Christmas on the mic for the women's race. What a week of contrasting and fascinating racing between the Alps, Amstel Gold, Liège and Flèche. So much to look forward to at the home of cycling on Eurosport GCN this week.
Les coureurs qui sont en train de se préparer et nous on va pouvoir échanger un petit mot bien sûr avec les représentants de l'activité.
Après Michel Sêtre, le maire de Salins, Monsieur Dominique Bonnet, le maire de Poligny, qui vient affronter également le brouillard ici sur ce podium. On a eu la pluie au départ, Monsieur Bonnet.
Well, we hope to be able to bring you these pictures. We are just about to be introduced to the mayor of Poligny. Let me remind you, it's going to be the finish town of stage 19 of this year's Tour de France, so big things coming.
Des sportifs qui ont eu beaucoup de courage par ce temps de monter, de ravir ce mont Poupée.
Faites peur aux vumètres, hein. Vous faites peur à mes vumètres derrière, vous avez beaucoup de courage, j'ai eu peur, d'accord. Donc c'est monter, ces envolées du maire de Poligny qui vont toujours impressionnantes.
Voilà.
Vous devriez être directeur de course pour encourager les coureurs.
Voilà, mais en tous les cas, bravo à surtout Jura Cyclisme, tous les bénévoles, de nombreux bénévoles qu'on a vus tout au long de la course. Un grand merci à tous ceux qui ont organisé cette belle course. Même si le temps est couvert, il y a une belle fête et une belle victoire.
He said congratulations to the organisers of the race, and despite the fact that we've had this heavy weather over us, we had a great party and a great winner too.
Et là on se prépare puisqu'on a inauguré cette semaine cette borne ici du moins à Poligny à côté de la maison du comté. On est à jour J-97.
Et oui, effectivement, la prochaine étape sera l'arrivée du Tour de France à Poligny avec un départ en moire en montagne. Belle étape, une grande préparation aussi. Et puis on espère aussi à une belle fête et de belles préparations, de belles fleurs et une belle course.
Talking about the preparations being made for the Tour de France when it comes to Poligny in July. Again, mentioning it's going to be a big party, big celebration.
Jura, un des beaux drapeaux qui était partout sur le territoire. Mais en tous les cas, la décoration, on est toujours accompagné de bénévoles et ça va être une très belle décoration sur l'ensemble du Jura comme d'habitude.
Merci Monsieur Bonnet, maire de Poligny. À mes côtés, Clément Pernaud, président du conseil départemental, toujours à fond dans le vélo et en tête de course. Alors, du monde le long du parcours quand même. Hein.
Ah oui, on a pu le constater. Et je veux surtout mettre en avant que c'est un Tour du Jura dantesque.
Ah, il est dantesque, épique.
Une météo difficile, un parcours ardu.
Just discussing how today's weather has made this an edition of the Tour du Jura even more epic than usual.
On peut être que très satisfait de l'organisation, de l'ambiance qu'on a pu vivre sur ce Tour du Jura, malgré la pluie, malgré le fond de l'air frais.
Ah bah ça il est frais, hein.
Mais tout cela n'a pas empêché justement l'expression d'une fête populaire, et c'est ce qui me plaît vraiment dans le cyclisme. On l'a vu tout au long du parcours, avec effectivement, comme vous le disiez, eh bien, la population jurassienne qui s'est déplacée en masse et qui est venue saluer, honorer les coureurs. Ce qui nous donne raison d'avoir bien tout fait pour avoir le critérium du Dauphiné libéré. Et je suis sûr que Bernard Thévenet regardait avec beaucoup d'attention cette étape du Poupée. Le Dauphiné viendra donc début juin. Et puis nous aurons bien sûr le 21 juillet l'arrivée, l'étape Madine Jura du Tour de France.
Just talking about the Dauphiné Libéré, which is going to be coming through the Jura as well this summer. So two big festivals of world-class cycling on the back of this, the Tour du Jura, of course.
Moi en arrière, eh bien, je peux vous assurer qu'il a dû regarder l'étape avec beaucoup d'attention et déjà en repérant, à mon avis, tout ce qu'il pourrait faire avec le Tour de France. Donc, la terre de Salins devient une terre propice aux cyclistes. Et je crois que là, c'est le résultat finalement d'une gestion efficace menée par cette équipe municipale. Et je tenais à les saluer au regard du travail extraordinaire qui a été fait. Tout comme je veux saluer eh bien, le président Bonnet, président de la communauté de communes Cœur du Jura, qui a agi de la plus belle manière de Poligny à ce Mont-Poupée aujourd'hui. Et tout ça dans une ambiance, comment dirais-je, prospère, efficace et sympathique.
Voilà, c'est dit. Voilà, ça c'est des envolées entre M. Bonnet et M. Pernaud. On y va. Jean-Charles Arnaud, Juraflore, qui vous donne l'heure tous les jours sur Fréquence Plus. Non, peut-être pas vous, hein, mais on entend Juraflore. Votre impression pour ce Tour du Jura aujourd'hui?
Eh ben, malgré le mauvais temps, magnifique. Et puis alors impressionné par tous les bénévoles partout, à tous les virages, dans toutes les zones dangereuses ici. Donc ça c'est déjà fabuleux. Il y a une mobilisation la jurassienne autour de cette course qui fait plaisir à voir. Voilà, ça c'est déjà à saluer. Puis alors un parcours, on a beau être dans la voiture, mais il est dur quand même hein, quand on les regarde.
Voilà, tout à fait. C'est vrai que les derniers kilomètres. Merci, on peut vous applaudir. Merci à vous. Merci. On va vous retrouver dans quelques instants pour la remise des trophées. Là aussi avec le protocole, les différents coureurs. Est-ce que les Jurassiens sont encore avec nous?
I did warn viewers yesterday that the French do like their podium presentations, and they do like involving everyone. I get it. It's nice. It's good, particularly when people have put so much hard work into this. Local councillors, mayors, race organisers, they want their time on stage. And yeah, the French definitely know how to elongate a podium presentation. It's all about the fête.
Que je vois s'enfoncer doucettement jusqu'au genou, mais bon, on essaiera de le retirer. Donc il y a les camions déjà qui vont essayer de redescendre et apparemment ils ont quelques difficultés les camions là.
Des écolos qui veulent pas qu'on en mette. Voilà.
Voilà, donc Lilian.
On est presque prêt pour accueillir au moins les 3 premiers. Notre tableau d'honneur est en train de s'étoffer un petit peu. Et on a déjà, bien sûr, nos personnalités pour remettre le prix au premier dans un instant, puisque Clément Pernaut aura le loisir de remettre, bien sûr, le maillot jaune au vainqueur de l'épreuve. On aura également le trophée des supporters qui lui sera remis, les différents prix et cadeaux souvenirs avec Jura Monsieur Arnaud qui remettra ses prix. On est en train d'enfiler une énième veste du côté des coureurs, on le comprend, et juste derrière, eh bien, on les accueille sur le podium protocolaire. À noter que nous aurons également donc avec le maillot de la montagne, tout à l'heure, Rabbi Rasparen qui est également allé chercher le prix des sprints intermédiaires, le prix du plus combatif, Kevin Vauquelin qui est également meilleur jeune.
Mountains jersey, sprints jersey, most combative riders jersey, and of course the Golden Zone jersey.
On va demander également à Miss Jura de nous rejoindre en TA. Ah ça vous intéresse plus, hein. Ah là là, on entend Antea, Miss Jura 2022, qu'on applaudit bien fort. Voilà.
Adam, listening to the crowd up there on Mont Poupée, I've got a fair idea how they've been keeping warm. They're certainly well hydrated, by the sound of it.
A lot of patio heaters as well, I think.
Bon, Antea qui était dans la caravane publicitaire, tu peux nous redire un peu ton impression, Antea?
Tout à fait, c'était très sympa. J'ai été agréablement surprise de voir autant de motivés pour encourager nos cyclistes. Vraiment bravo.
Voilà, donc, tu fais du vélo?
Pas trop, plutôt du ski de fond.
Du ski de fond, bah voilà, on est dans la région. Donc Antea, on peut l'applaudir bien fort, qui remettra son titre prochainement. Donc à quelle date la prochaine élection de Miss Jura?
Le dimanche 14 mai à Besançon.
Voilà, donc prochaine Miss Jura. Donc, et ensuite, pour vous, c'est quoi?
Pour moi, c'est fini. J'accompagnerai la nouvelle Miss Jura pendant son année.
Et dans la vie, vous faites quoi?
Je suis étudiante en dernière année de bachelor en économie et management en école de commerce.
Voilà, eh bien merci d'avoir été avec nous. Et je rappelle qu'elle est deuxième dauphine de Miss Franche-Comté 2022. Allez, c'est parti pour le protocole de remise de maillot.
On va faire un petit peu de place.
I didn't ever think I would get to commentate over the top of an interview with Miss Jura 2022.
Vainqueur du Tour de l'Ain, meilleur grimpeur d'un Tour d'Espagne, 8e d'un Tour de France.
Don't see that very often.
Guillaume Martin va nous rejoindre, 3e de l'épreuve. Guillaume Martin pour la formation Cycliste, qui va être premier à ce jour.
Guillaume Martin, you can hear him being called up onto the soaking wet podium. Third place on the day for Copidis and their best finisher.
Pour nous rejoindre, on le comprend bien sûr. La formation Copidis qui vient à nouveau faire un sacré numéro après la victoire de Victor l'a fait hier. Aujourd'hui, c'est la 3e place, mesdames, messieurs, pour Guillaume Martin.
Second time lucky, perhaps. He's looked good both days. Not quite at his best yet, one feels.
Avec les prix qui lui sont remis, effectivement, les cadeaux souvenirs, bien sûr, avec les magnums offerts par Cédric Joly, avec le comté, bien sûr, Giraflore, le trophée officiel offert par Marc Menouillard. On va accueillir à ses côtés le deuxième de l'épreuve, triple vainqueur sur les routes du Tour de France, vainqueur sur la Vuelta et le Tour d'Italie, vainqueur du Tour de Lombardie. Mesdames, messieurs, pour l'information, groupe Thibaut Pinot.
The Thibaut Pinot fan club. Make the most of it, because it might not last too much longer as a rider. Listen to this.
Deuxième de l'épreuve, Thibaut Pinot qui reçoit lui aussi les récompenses.
Voilà des mains de Monsieur Baudet, de Christelle Morbois.
Ah, fantastic. You don't get that with many other riders. Not quite in the same way.
Le Magnum, bien sûr, à faire péter demain soir.
There's something about Thibaut Pinot. He is quintessentially French. And I think the heart of the French public absolutely love that.
Deuxième de la route Adélie, quatrième de l'étoile de Bessèges. Mesdames, messieurs, Kevin Vauquelin pour la formation Arkea Samsic.
All day I was looking for that red jersey, seeing where he was hiding, and there he was hiding in plain view, right near the front of the group, waiting to make one move. The final move, and it was the one that worked for the 21-year-old Kevin Vauquelin. He continues this fantastic start to the year he's had. Winner of the Tour des Alpes-Maritimes du Var, fourth at the Étoile de Bessèges at the start of the season overall, second at the Route Adelaide des Vitres in the Coupe de France one days, and then sixth in the recent Région Pays de la Loire Tour. Rarely outside the top 10 in the big races he's done so far this year. As I mentioned to Adam earlier, unfortunately he's French, which means that he will be talked of probably as being the next big hope of French cycling, just as Thibaut Pinot was all that time before him, just as Guillaume Martin has been as well in the last 6 or 7 years.
Pouvoir libérer ses coureurs. Kevin, tu vas pouvoir lever ton maillot, mais pas partir trop loin, vu qu'on a un autre prix pour toi juste après. On va se faire un petit peu de place sur le podium.
Voilà, les représentants du Crédit Mutuel sont attendus, ainsi que Solimut et Bellamy. Voilà, tout de suite le représentant du Crédit Mutuel et Solimut,
que nous allons accueillir pour le prix suivant, puisque c'est le prix du meilleur jeune qui va être remis maintenant avec les partenaires officiels du Crédit Mutuel et de Solimut.
Le prix du meilleur jeune, not to be confused with the maillot jaune, which is something entirely different if you're not up on your French. This is the jersey of the best under 23. Well, it should be Kevin Vauquelin, as he is 21, the winner of today's race.
Kevin Vauquelin, on l'a dit, il a 21 ans. C'est donc tout logiquement que le vainqueur de l'épreuve est également un meilleur jeune. Et qu'il va recevoir à nouveau les applaudissements, s'il vous plaît, pour Kevin Vauquelin, meilleur jeune de l'épreuve.
Just making sure they hadn't got some rules saying that the winner can't also win 2 prizes. Rightly so. 21-year-old winning the 6th edition of the Tour du Jura. And that is the, I should have said this really, 3rd pro win of his career for Kevin Vauquelin. The rider who's been with Arkea Samsic since the start of his pro career, having graduated from VC Rouen. Spent a bit of time with Arkea Samsic while he was with that French elite club, as well as a stagiaire.
Pour ce Tour du Jura 2023, ici au Mont-Poupée.
Chapeau, Kevin Vauquelin, vainqueur de l'épreuve, et donc logiquement meilleur jeune.
Best young rider under the age of 23, Kevin Vauquelin.
Se mettre au chaud, et nous on va pouvoir poursuivre la cérémonie protocolaire avec le prix de la montagne.
Alors le prix de la montagne avec MSA, monsieur Philippe.
Mountains classification is up next for those 3 categorized climbs.
Et voilà pour l'instant donc les constructions Chauvin et MSA, un représentant ici sur le podium.
This should be Xavier Asparan.
Une bonne partie de la course à l'avant, on va accueillir bien sûr les partenaires. Tout d'abord, ça bouchonne un petit peu, on va pouvoir les retrouver.
Voilà, les constructions Chauvin et la MSA. Donc ils nous rejoignent ici sur le podium.
Et on va pouvoir remettre le maillot à poids de meilleur grimpeur aujourd'hui à un garçon qui a effectué un beau bout de chemin à l'avant, l'Espagnol de 23 ans, Javier Asparan Irorza, et donc meilleur grimpeur de cette édition. Il va pouvoir nous rejoindre pour la formation.
Xavier Asparan, who led across the top of the Côte de Tessie and across the top as well of the Côte de Champagne. He was the last remaining rider from our breakaway of 12 escaped on that forested descent quite late on in the tenure of that 12-man breakaway, and then persisted by himself for a good, what, 20k, something like that, out there by himself.
Voilà, on attend, on essaie de le précipiter un petit peu pour que les coureurs puissent redescendre, se mettre au chaud rapidement avant de rejoindre Morteau pour le Tour du Doubs qui se déroulera demain dimanche.
Le voilà, donc le meilleur grimpeur de l'épreuve qui va recevoir le prix avec les partenaires, on le rappelle. De ce maillot à pois.
Looks like our announcer has actually gone off to go and grab Xavier Aspirant, and here he is. No doubt trying to get warm after a very cold day out. Good to see he's got a little bit more on, but still only just one fairly slim long-sleeve jersey. He's a tough guy, Xavier Aspirant, kept warm, no doubt, by his very impressive moustache. Leader across 2 of the 3 categorised climbs, and therefore our king of the mountains. And for those of you who haven't watched maybe the Tour de Jura or the Tour de l'Ain, which is in this part of the world before, maybe haven't quite got to see the beauty of the limestone mountains of the Jura today. It is a fantastic part of France. Less on the hit list of the tourists, it has to be said as well, so a good opportunity to take in some proper rural French countryside, lovely cycling roads as well, maybe in slightly better weather than this.
Avec Jean-Christophe Tétaz, donc les représentants de Groupama et des Maisons Chazal pour nous rejoindre sur le podium.
Allez, très vite, et on va retrouver voilà, l'ensemble. Ça y est, ils sont tous là, c'est bon. Et en théâtre, notre ami Jura, avec le beau bouquet vert.
Le maillot vert qui va être remis bien, au même coureur que l'on a retrouvé aujourd'hui à l'avant, Rabir Asparen, va nous rejoindre à nouveau pour recevoir le maillot vert. Il en a déjà un, bien ce sera un deuxième.
Voilà, et on applaudit de nouveau.
On va les enfiler les uns après les autres.
I'm not sure he's supposed to come up wearing the Mountains jersey as well to collect the points jersey. There we go, but he gets both because he certainly was first through the line in Ardèche, and I think he took one other point elsewhere as well across those 3 points. So just as we'd seen Rory Townsend doing the day before in the classic Grand Besançon Doubs, here in the Tour du Jura, Xavier Aspirant takes both jerseys, King of the Mountains and our green points jersey as well. Will we one day see them being worn the next day, maybe, when this Challenge Franc-Comtois becomes a stage race or not? Or will it stay as 3 one-day races? Let's see. Certainly 3 tight days of racing.
Un dernier maillot, ça va être avec le prix de la combativité.
Et là, nous attendons donc la maison Bellamy avec François Xavier et également avec voilà, le groupe Bellamy est attendu ici directement.
There's an awful lot of chat going on the podium. 2 mics as well in hand. It should be our most combative, most attacking, most aggressive rider. And Javier Aspirant again. Let's just keep him up there. It'd be a lot easier. He's had a good day out. I did wonder whether it might be Alessandro Vere getting this prize. But you can't argue with it. Xavier Aspirant attacked the breakaway and persisted.
Il va partager, j'espère, ce garçon-là. Il va partager.
Allez, il y en a pour toute l'équipe et même pour le staff.
Ils ont le sourire, l'équipe, ils ont le sourire. Voilà, on remerciera également tous les bénévoles qui étaient présents sur ce Tour du Jura. Ceux qui se sont là aussi occupés de la sécurité, les gendarmes, la sécurité civile.
Well, for those of you who are still with us, I think we only have one more classification. That might well be the Golden Zone classement.
Bien sûr, le département du Jura à l'honneur, si Clément Pernot est toujours dans les parages pour remettre le prix du kilomètre 39.
C'est Cyril Bréraud qui va prendre la place, vice-président du conseil départemental, avec Christelle Morbois, conseillère départementale, qui vont remettre ce maillot.
Un garçon qui a été le plus combatif de la journée d'hier et aujourd'hui, premier au kilomètre 39, c'est Morné Van Niekerk.
This is the prize for kilometre 39, kilomètre 39. Morné Van Niekerk in the breakaway yesterday and today.
Le bouquet. Allez, photo pour le département du Jura.
The South African, 2 good days of racing in the breakaway both days.
Morné Van Niekerk, leader donc au 39e kilomètre aujourd'hui, le prix du département du Jura.
Good to see our fans watching around the world are enjoying the podium presentation. Thank you, Neil Anderson, as always, for getting in touch. Loving the elongated, indulgent, some might say, French podium presentations. There's always plenty going on. Morné Van Niekerk hasn't exactly wrapped up. He's stripped down to a skin suit. Another hard man.
Au chaud. En revanche, si on a au moins un directeur sportif pour ce prix par équipe, on attend la formation Arkea avec Alessandro Vera pour la Golden Zone. Je crois qu'on a le tirage également de la MSA, c'est cela. Vous pouvez venir en attendant les coureurs peut-être.
Voilà, Ars de la G2R, est-ce qu'il y a encore quelqu'un?